Hey, Chuck. I don't see
Hi.
Craig here yet, though he has signed in. So you may want to give it a minute or two for him.
Sure, absolutely.
So Craig's logging in. So while we wait for Craig,
Why
I'm just going
don't
to
you
go
go
ahead
ahead?
and give the pre-meeting instructions for everybody who may be joining us for the first time. So welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining us or first time in a long time, you'll notice that everyone is muted and you're going to stay muted throughout the duration of the meeting. Only the co-chairs and the presenters will be unmuted during each of the presentations. Following each of the presentations and agenda items, the co-chairs, Chuck and Craig, will call on members of the public who wish to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon and pressing the raise hand button. It's the one that says raise hand. It's not the thumbs up or the wave. Those will disappear. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling in from the phone, it is *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once one of the co-chairs calls on you. If you're having problems, the chat is available for technical support only to help with Zoom software. It is not to ask questions of the co-chairs or the presenters. They will never see those chats. You're just wasting your own time typing into the chat. If you are using an older version of Zoom, you'll need to go to the participants section where you'll find the raise hand feature there. And finally, we encourage you not to raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because there are a lot of folks in the room and we may not see you and we may miss you. So if you're having problems, chat me. I'm here for support. And with that, I see Craig is here and Chuck is both of you are both here now. So we can get this meeting started.
Thanks. Thank you, Will. So why don't we call the meeting to order? And this is the July meeting of the Transportation Committee of Community Board 8. I'm Chuck Warren, one of the co-chairs, and Craig, my other co-chair, is also here. We welcome everyone. And our first presentation is from New York City DOT and the MTA, a presentation on proposed changes to the First Avenue bus lane between 61st Street and 79th Street. And I know we have a number of people here from transportation, and I see Rachel Eisenberg. And why don't we unmute Rachel and the others who are going to be presenting here, and we can get started. Craig, I don't know if you want to add anything at this point.
No, I'm looking forward to the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. I think I'm not sure if she was unmuted, but the other presenter will be Laura Azzi-Singh. So
Yeah, let unmute Laura there. She's not. There she goes. Okay, good. Rachel, why don't you take it away?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, is everyone seeing the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thanks, Chuck, for the introduction. Again, my name is Rachel Eisenberg. I'm a project manager with DOT's Transit Development. And tonight I'll be going over our proposal for our First Avenue bus lane enhancement project. I'll also be joined by Laura Azzi-Singh from MTA a little later on in the presentation. All right, so just to start out with our agenda, I'll start by going over some background and existing conditions on First Avenue. Next, we'll move on to the proposal, and we'll wrap it all up with the summary and our steps moving forward. So for some background, starting out with an overview of current First Avenue bus service. First Avenue is served by the M15 local and select bus service. This is a crucial corridor with about 48,000 daily riders, making it the busiest route in Manhattan, and in 2020 was also the busiest route in the whole city. To accommodate this immense demand, buses are scheduled every 3 minutes in the peak periods. But unfortunately, we often see bus speeds lag at around 5.4 miles per hour in the morning and 7.8 miles per hour in the evening. So because of the importance of this corridor, there has been previous bus priority investment. In October of 2010, the M15 Select bus service launched, and with it, a combination of curbside and offset bus lanes. And as you can see on the map, the M15 uses what we consider to be higher quality full-time offset bus lanes for the majority of its uptown route, but it does shift to a curbside part-time bus lane in Midtown and a significant portion of the Upper East Side. So 43rd to 79th are those extents. Now I'll turn it over to Laura to go over some of the bus speeds.
Thanks, Rachel. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to briefly discuss some of the current speed and bus lane conditions along First Avenue. On this first slide, we see bus speeds by time of day. On the left, you see that along First Avenue during the morning peak hours, when the bus lanes are in effect, you've got those speeds on the left. On the right, you see the afternoon speeds that are slightly higher than the morning speeds. And this is partially because there are more vehicles blocking the curbside bus lanes for pickup and drop-off activities and deliveries in the morning hours. In the middle map, you have midday speeds, which shows when the bus lanes are not in effect. Not surprisingly, speeds are higher for both offset and curbside bus lane segments during the hours when the bus lane is in effect. Generally, bus speeds along First Avenue just south of 61st Street are fairly low, as you would expect with traffic approaching the bridge. However, in the segment just north of the bridge between 61st and 79th, where the bus lanes are curbside, we see lower speeds than north of 79th Street, where they are already offset bus lanes. I think we can go to the next one, Rachel. As we just saw, bus speeds are higher and bus service is more reliable during the hours that the bus lanes are in effect. But we also know that bus lanes only work when they're kept clear and available for buses to use reliably. ABLE, which stands for Automated Bus Lane Enforcement, is a program that uses cameras mounted on buses to issue violations to vehicles parked in the bus lane. Through April of this year, 3 of the 5 highest violation spots for the M15 route occurred in the segment of 61st to 79th Street along First Avenue, which is not surprising because this is the segment of, where the bus lanes are all curbside. And as we know, curbside bus lanes are more likely to be blocked by parked vehicles than offset lanes. ABLE is a tool that helps buses move quickly and reliably in their dedicated lanes by discouraging vehicles from obstructing those lanes. When this tool is combined with shifting the bus lane away from the curb, that reduces the chances of vehicles parking in the bus lane. Both of these things will work together to go a long way towards improving bus service and the M15 customer experience along First Avenue. I think you can move to the next one, Rachel.
All right, so to summarize our existing conditions on First Avenue, or on this portion of First Avenue, the part-time curbside bus lane is in effect from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, allowing for commercial parking and loading on the east curb in that intervening 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. period. Unfortunately, the intense curb demand, whether for deliveries, drop-offs, or parking, often means that the bus lane is parked up, as Laura showed in those ABLE violations. It's parked up often outside of that 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. window. And whether the bus lane is blocked by a large truck, like this photo at 63rd Street shows, or a couple small cars, it means that the buses can't actually use the bus lane. Instead, they have to merge into general traffic, slowing down the bus and the cars surrounding it, and making it less reliable for the tens of thousands of New Yorkers who use it daily. So we've come to find that the current street design is insufficient for bus riders, as well as those businesses and individuals who need to access the east curb. So moving on to our proposal. So our proposal, the majority of it is shifting the bus lane from the east curb to the offset lane from 61st to 79th Street. So as you can see in the image right now, the existing condition, the bus lane is right next to the curb, that red paint. In our proposed, we're recommending moving it from right next to the curb to the first travel lane, just in general. And you can see an example of that on from this photo of Lexington Avenue. This is looking north. This upgrades the bus, will upgrade the bus lane from its existing part-time status to a full-time status, improving service throughout the day, because we know that the bus travels faster when it has a bus lane to use. This also connects to the existing infrastructure where we have an offset bus lane already north of 79th Street. So really creating that flow throughout the whole Upper East Side of an offset bus lane continuously for the M15 and M15 select bus service. So why an offset bus lane? So an offset bus lane will be a huge upgrade to this portion of the corridor. First, it allows buses to work the way they're supposed to, providing dedicated space for the bus, allowing it to drive unimpeded by parked or standing vehicles. This makes buses faster and more reliable for bus riders. And we've seen significant bus speed increases on Lexington Avenue, where a 2019 project moved the bus lane from curbside to offset. But looking at an even better mode of comparison, we saw in the maps that Laura shared that north of 79th Street, where the bus lane is already offset, we see much higher bus speeds. So our goal in this project is to increase bus speeds to those higher levels, improving service throughout the route. Importantly, by implementing an offset bus lane, this project opens up the east curb for additional parking, loading, and drop-offs for a much greater portion of the day. This alleviates the current delivery time constraints, helping local businesses. And another note, though, is that we are recommending that we keep a no standing regulation on the east curb from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but as we've seen from those speed graphs or charts, the First Avenue in this portion is actually busier in the morning as opposed to the evening rush hour. And so we are recommending keeping that no standing regulation just from 7 to 9 a.m. To prevent vehicles pulling into or off of the curb from blocking the bus lane at the busiest hours of the day. This still gives commercial vehicles an additional 6 hours at the curb on weekdays, though, compared to what we currently have. All right, so in addition, as a part of this proposal, we're also including right turn lanes or right turn bays at intersections with heavy right turns, so 72nd and 79th. Normally, vehicles make right turns from the bus lane, but in these higher trafficked areas, the dedicated turn lane helps keep the bus clear from those right turning vehicles waiting for a safe time to turn. And it does this by repurposing up to about 6 parking spots per location. All right, so since we're moving the bus off of the curb, as I mentioned, this opens up a lot of the east curb space that was previously dedicated to the bus lane for a large portion of the day. When looking into how to best use this new space, we broke the blocks down into 2 main categories of land uses. The first kind of category are small stores and restaurants. These types of land uses often have a lot more deliveries per block. There's more shops, there's more restaurants, they're smaller, and they often take a shorter period of time. So on these types of blocks, we are generally recommending that from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., there be 2-hour metered commercial parking. These shorter meters facilitate higher turnover for the larger number of deliveries. There are also blocks which have larger commercial land uses, think grocery stores, Rite Aids, things like that, which often have fewer but larger and longer deliveries. So on these blocks, we're recommending in that 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Time frame, a 3-hour metered commercial parking, which is what's currently there, to allow for these longer loading periods. Both of these updated regulations maintain the same overnight and weekend parking that currently exists along First Avenue. So just as a little recap, this is what the existing curb regulations look like. So no standing during those bus lane hours, 7 to 10 a.m. and 2 to 7 p.m. with 3-hour metered commercial parking Monday through Friday in the intervening time, and 2-hour metered commercial parking, or 2-hour metered parking, sorry, on Saturday from 9 to 7. There's also, if parking anytime, no standing any times for things like bus stops, curb cuts and whatnot. And in our updated curb regulations, we're not making any changes to those no standing areas or to bus stop locations, but you can see kind of the mix of the 2-hour metered commercial parking. Again, that's just on weekdays from that 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. period, and that 3-hour commercial metered parking in that 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. period for the larger chains and commercial retail. Additionally, we just want to really drive home that using these curb regulation updates will ensure that this project helps bus riders along with local businesses and people trying to access them. All right, so moving on to our summary and next steps. So in summary, First Avenue bus lanes are often blocked by vehicles. Buses are forced to use shared travel lanes, slowing down bus service. Offset bus lanes will improve bus speeds and reliability for the thousands of daily bus riders. Again, this is the busiest bus route in Manhattan. And offset bus lanes will improve the bus speed, will improve the bus speeds and reliability. And it'll also improve the curb access, which we know is really important. As we continue to refine the design and traffic analysis for this project, we're paying careful attention to those intersections in the low 60s where the Queensboro Bridge and FDR access lead to higher traffic volumes, along with those intersections with large crosstown connectors, so 72nd and 79th, to ensure that this project benefits the bus without hampering other roadway users. And based on our preliminary traffic analysis and our experience with similar conditions north of 79th Street, we expect that signal timing changes and the new turn bays will generally mitigate the effects on traffic, ensuring minimal impact on general traffic flow. So getting into our next step. So this summer, we'll continue to refine our design and traffic analysis. In the fall, we hope to implement the project. I also wanted to mention that I know that, First Avenue, we're obviously paying attention to in this presentation, but in the fall, there will be a Third Avenue presentation from DOT that will be coming to the community board. Again, that's a separate presentation and project, but we just wanted you guys to be aware. And then finally, in the winter and spring after implementation, we'll continue to collect data and monitor the performance of this bus lane. So thank you so much, and I'll open it up for discussion and any questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Let me say, before we open up the questions to the public first and then to the board, I just want to recognize we have Colleen Chattergoon, who is our liaison from DOT and works very closely with our committee, and also Marcus Book, who is our liaison from New York City Transit and also works very closely. It's good to see you both, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more of you. So why don't we go to the public first for people who have raised their hands, and let's see who we have here. I think we have someone by the name of Lydia, the first hand I see. And can you identify yourself, Lydia, and unmute?
Yes.
Lydia?
Thank you so much. My name is Lydia Canizares. Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to take this opportunity, since it's the MTA and you might be able to give us an update. If you recall, we used to have a limited bus service that went up first and down second, which changed to the SBS system, which has really moved things along. But in that transition, the 72nd Street stop was eliminated. We were told that it would resurrect itself, it would be opened up after the 2nd Avenue subway. was completed because of the good transportation connections it would offer. That was 5 years ago. We still haven't gotten it. So my question is, do you know, and can you provide an update as to whether East 72nd Street on First and Second Avenue will get a select bus stop?
Laura, I
Somebody
don't
from
know.
the MTA want to answer that? Is that an MTA question, I think?
Yes, that would be an MTA question. Laura, do you want to speak to this?
Or if Marcus has spoken to this before, I don't know if he wants to get
She's
into this.
Laura is muted.
Okay,
Oh,
can
yeah,
you hear me now?
unmute more Laura and Marcus. Yeah. why
Can
don't
you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so as the board knows, we've had several many discussions about the 72nd Street request for a 72nd Street stop for SBS. As recently as looks like March of this year, Senator Kruger and a group of elected officials sent a letter requesting the same. And I have to report that not much has changed. First of all, when the Second Avenue subway was up and coming, we said we would take a look at it once Second Avenue subway was operating. I know because I was the one who said it. Okay, and so what is the likely scenario is that when Omni is fully operational in 2024, we're taking a look at it right now, and there'll be an opportunity for the SBS to return at that time.
You do realize that we're the only major crosstown street in Manhattan that does not have an SBS.
Well, there's the local does stop there. You do have
The
service.
local is extremely slow, as you know, you just made the presentation, and extremely well traveled. You just said First Avenue is the most traveled route in the city. And this, I think, is really terrible that you made a promise 12 years ago.
Didn't make a promise.
Well,
no promises.
It was suggested that we should wait, and the whole community waited until the Second Avenue subway work was completed, and that was 5 years ago. So you have a lot of people who live in the Upper East Side, who live in the 72nd Street vicinity, who are not able to walk to the far SBS stops. And I would strongly suggest that you put in an SBS stop at 72nd Street. And then when Omni comes, it'll be that much faster. But waiting for Omni does not make any sense. That's my humble opinion.
I understand. Just so you understand, SBS stops require installation of fare payment machines at the location, quite costly to install. And at this point, transitioning to Omni as a fare payment system, transitioning to or putting in a fare array that takes a MetroCard doesn't really make a lot of sense at this point. So I would suggest, and again, this is something I've gotten this request for a number of years, and right now
it's well needed.
I understand. And then we're also going to be doing, subsequent to the Omni launch, we'll be doing a redesign of the bus network in Manhattan once Brooklyn is completed, which we just
is Omni going to be available for reduced fare passengers?
Absolutely.
And can you explain why the express stop at 72nd Street was eliminated and not replaced by an SBS back in the day?
Sure, because when SBS was initially discussed, we had meetings, and at that time, and Laura can jump in. Valerie's saying no. It was agreed upon. The stops that the SBS has right now were presented to the community boards, it was agreed upon, and that's where we came. So we replaced limited with SBS, but 72nd Street is a local stop. and will continue to be served as a local stop until Omni is fully operational.
Laura, do
I
you have
appreciate the
anything to add?
explanation, but it doesn't satisfy me. Just putting it on the record.
Appreciate that.
We got 3,000 signatures when the limited bus was not replaced by an SBS after the construction for the Second Avenue subway, which was our original timeline, was completed. And I personally sat on buses going back and forth and got over 3,000 signatures, myself and my team. And nothing has happened. And I think that that's being very unresponsive.
Point taken, Lydia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lydia. Okay, I think next is Leah Hanlon. Is Leah, can we unmute Leah?
Yes, good evening. I noticed that the new arrangement will cut out one traffic lane so that there will be 3. And one problem we have on Second Avenue is that there are frequently vehicles trucks standing in the traffic lanes, sometimes one on each side, so that the avenue is reduced to 1 lane, causing huge traffic jams. Even though you have a commercial lane that you're making for commercial parking, I suspect that the trucks will continue to just park wherever they find it convenient to park. What is this going to do to traffic on First Avenue? I note that both First and Second are the official alternates to the drive. So God forbid we have flooding or an accident or something, those roads can be totally backed up.
Yeah, and I totally understand what you're saying with Second Avenue. I should say I actually live in this area and, commute up and down First and Second. So I've definitely experienced those conditions that you're talking about. We can use the tools that we have in our toolkit. And some of that includes, updating those curb regulations to make it more attractive and, more feasible for commercial vehicles to actually use the curb space that we've provided for them. Simultaneously, as a part of a different project, another unit at DOT is starting to look at the west curb of First Avenue as well, because we do know that the demand for commercial parking and loading space is just so high in this part of the corridor. So I think that, in part, we are designing, we can only, design for the legal use, but we do also acknowledge, sorry, getting some feedback. We do also acknowledge that, there are other things that come up. And that's where some of those curb regulations and changes, hope to address some of those issues. Additionally, we hope to use some of the tools like the ABLE cameras, which, ticket vehicles using or parking in the bus lane, combined with those expanded curb regulations and moving the bus lane away from the curb to really enhance the overall traffic movement.
The trucks aren't actually parked in the bus lane. They're parked in the through lanes. It's a big problem on Second Avenue. So do you have some plan for coordinating with whoever enforces this to keep the parked trucks out of the through lanes?
Yeah, I can chime in here too. And I think Rachel covered most of it. We do recognize that it's a major challenge. But by some of these design changes, trucks that are currently like on Second Avenue where it's curbside the whole way, that's kind of one reason why you will have a lot of trucks, in the moving lane. By creating kind of this dedicated curb space that's dedicated a lot of truck loading. It does create dedicated space. We're not going to lie, there will be times when, that's full and trucks will try to do other things. And so we do work with our partners at PD, to try to do enforcement, but also, for the bus lane itself, there is camera enforcement, as Rachel pointed out. And as Rachel also pointed out, we'll be looking at trying to, update the curb regs on the other side of the street as well to really try to, make sure we keep these lanes clear as much of the time as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now, I don't see any further members of the public that want to speak unless Will, do you see anyone that I might have missed?
Don't, but I'll just remind everybody, if you do want to participate, go to the reactions icon and look for the button that says raise hand.
Okay, why don't we go to the board? Rita Popper has had her hand up for a while.
Go ahead, Rita.
Hi, thank you for your presentation, and I'm sure you work very hard at it. I'm 83 years old, and I'd like to point out a few things and know how you plan to solve it. One, there are many people who ride the bus on First Avenue because it serves the hospital corridor as to how people are going to get off with walkers. And as that ramp comes down from the bus to the street, now the bus is pretty close to a large truck. So how do we get somebody off the bus? That's number one. The reason that buses pull to the curb is because the front entrance to the bus is lower than the other entrances. I happen to be short. I take the front entrance because I'm tired of jumping. And I mean jumping almost with a parachute. So I don't understand. You are now putting people in danger of being in a lane that is going into traffic versus letting us off at a curb that is not traffic.
Sorry, Rita, sorry, Rita, to interrupt you, but I just want to put you at ease and assure you that the bus will still be pulling to the curb at the bus stops.
Yes, so this does
no
not
worry there.
Yeah, this does not change the location of the bus stop or where the bus will be pulling into. So the no standing bus stop area along the curb will remain a bus stop. And just like on north of 79th Street and south of 43rd Street, when a bus needs to pull into the stop, it will pull into the curb, as if it were, a car parking or something, so that it can lower at the front to maintain its accessibility for all bus riders.
And to Marcus's point, Marcus, you and I have been around the track several times, many, many years. We have a bike dock at 72nd Street because right at the entrance to the subway, because we hope that bikers will get off their bike and get onto the subway. And yet the people who really use the buses don't have that. And we keep increasing the medical corridor on York Avenue, First Avenue. You can go to Costco and there's Mount Sinai there. The point is that what this woman said, we've been saying for years, you're the only crosstown street that doesn't have a bus stop. So people coming from the south who are going for treatment at Hospital for Special Surgery or Memorial Sloan Kettering, they have to take a local bus, and they can't get there fast. And I really think it's time to take this back to the drawing board and realize that this is the only crosstown street that does not have an express bus stop in either direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. Next, Valerie Mason. Can we unmute Valerie?
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everybody. I joined the proposal late. So I'm basically, and so essentially you're going to be codifying what is practically happening every day, which is the bus doesn't pull up to the curb. Is that right? Because most times the bus never pulls to the curb to begin with. So you're saying that if there's a truck that's in the parking spot, I mean, how's this going to work? Because where's the enforcement going to be on the two and the parking and moving these cars out of the way?
So just to be clear, and I think Laura explained this a little bit, this would work the same way that, many, bus routes work throughout the city, right? Where the bus is traveling in the lane adjacent to the curb, and at the stops, the bus is pulling into the stop. And to be, often, because we see the bus lane blocked so often, and there's also times when the existing curbside bus lane is not in effect, right? And there's parking overnight. And so the bus is in the lane, adjacent to it. And so at the stop, it is still pulling into the stop, and the stops are still signed as no standing. We're not adding loading where the stops are. So that will still be the practice.
And you're saying that the creation of this new lane is going to improve bus speeds by how much?
So we don't have, an exact number. We can look to some examples. So on Lexington Avenue, a similar project improved bus speeds about 10% in the morning, which is, where we're seeing our higher demand. And we can also see that.
I'm sorry, Rachel.
Yep.
Can you tell me what 10% means in actual seconds and minutes?
Yeah. So as another example, we can also go to, we can go to, north of 79th Street right now, the bus lane on First Avenue is already offset. So, this project is just continuing down that same cross-section, that same roadway layout and geometry, just further south. So bringing the standard of bus priority in line with the further north section. And you can see from these maps that, north of 79th Street in the morning, which again is the busier hour on First Avenue in general, and on the bus, there's about the bus speeds are, pretty significantly higher when we look at, the 60s at 7.4 miles per hour up to 10 or 11 miles per hour further north on First Avenue. Midday, where we don't have any bus priority or any bus lanes in effect, we can see those even larger differences. So in the 60s, 5.2 miles per hour, and north of 79th Street, around 10 miles per hour.
And okay, a couple of things. You said that during the summer is when you're going to be refining the program. I don't see how you can do anything during the summer when the level of traffic historically and even now is not the same as during I don't know how you use the summer months as a run for a proposal for permanence.
So when I said we're refining the traffic analysis and design over the summer, we already have that data collected. We have historic data, ranging back from, pre-pandemic to more recent years. We don't use generally summer data because of, the differences in traffic patterns, school isn't in session, all of those things. And so it's just working on analyzing the data that we already have.
Mm-hmm. And again, you made a comment that First Avenue is the most highly trafficked bus corridor in the city. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the M15.
With over 48,000 passengers. And you're telling us that we have to wait until you look at something related to Omni before we can get an SBS bus stop. Marcus?
Yes, Valerie, what I'm saying is that right now, based on the data and how we cite bus stops, that it is most likely that we're going to continue to look at it, because right now the ridership doesn't support adding an SBS. I know that you guys feel and desire an SBS stop, but there is a bus stop at 72nd Street. And with all the factors of the transitioning to Omni, that makes the most sense for us taking a look and considering putting an SBS stop there once Omni is in place. I'm sorry that you feel
Marcus,
differently about it.
I hear you saying something completely different. I hear you saying
No, I'm
that
saying
the
the words.
technology for
No,
SBS is going
Valerie,
to change.
you can't
Let me finish.
continue to
Let me
paraphrase
finish. Please, let me finish. I hear you saying that the technology for SBS is going to change in 2024, and you guys don't want to spend the money to put in those kiosks at 72nd Street. And that's why you're waiting. Because if we have a bus corridor that's the most highly trafficked bus corridor, and the last time we spoke about this, there was no MSKK at 74th Street. There wasn't going to be a new Kellen Tower at HSS. We weren't going to have all these additional people using a 72nd Street stop. We're going to have a dormitory there. The neighborhood has become even more dense since the last time we talked about this, that you're essentially saying that we're waiting for a better technology, and so that you guys don't have to have a capital expenditure for infrastructure for our stop. That's what I hear you saying.
I understand that you hear that. That's not what I said. Laura, do you have any, do you want to jump in here about what the ridership is on the SBS versus the local?
Yes, I'm sorry that I don't have specific counts, but we do show an increase in ridership at 72nd Street, which completely tracks with what all of you are saying, Valerie, with all of the increased demand at this location. Understanding that, we are agreeing to continue to look at this. And I know it's not satisfying because we've been having this conversation for many years now. The ridership, it's the combination of ridership and the whole concept behind SBS is higher spacing between bus stops, right? So it kind of mimics a subway stop layout, right? So it's supposed to be about 10 blocks between stops. So while it replaced the limited, it didn't replace it one for one with each stop. There were other stops as well that went away from the limited.
Well, none of those stops that were not replaced after the bus stop was taken away didn't have a major subway stop from 72nd and 68th Street.
We hear you.
I know you're hearing me, but you're not really listening to me, because that's why we still don't have a stop. So I'm just, I'm looking at what you're doing here. I know it has nothing to do with this, but the facts that you're using to improve bus speeds in this corridor all point to having our SBS stop at 72nd Street at 1st and 2nd Avenue. And I just, the other thing I just want to say, and I don't want to take up any more time, and I appreciate everybody's indulgence here, is where is the enforcement DOT that's going to come with these metered parking? Because nobody is giving out tickets on the Upper East Side. They watch these trucks, they stay there forever, and it's not going to be helpful to the businesses, because trucks are going to come and they're going to permanently park and they're going to absorb all the tickets. So I don't see how this is going to help our small businesses who have complained vehemently about the no stoppage. And I'd also like for you to answer the question is, how is this going to be affected by all the sheds that are currently in the bus lanes?
So I guess to the first question, for enforcement, like we, we work with our partners in YPD on enforcement, and I know it's sometimes not the level that, you know, we also would like the level of enforcement to be a lot better, to make sure the curb's working, to make sure the bus lanes are working, you know. But I would say, you know, we of course want that to work and want that turnover. You know, right now a lot of that is happening in the bus lane, right? And so that's definitely not working for the bus. So this does make that improvement of moving it off of the curb. So even if trucks are overstaying, you know, we're working to keep the bus lane a little bit more clear. You know, as far as, you know, for the open restaurants, and maybe Colleen can chime in here a little bit more. You know, we are kind of going through a process of updating that program quite a bit, and so, you know, it'll be a bit different, where there'll be, you know, more movable. There shouldn't be any in the curbside bus lane right now. If there are, you know, please let us know, and we will, you know, work work on removing those. But you know, this would accommodate open restaurants during the times that it's no standing. So, you know, during the afternoon and PM times, moving the bus lane off of the curb would allow for that, but they'd have to be moved during the time when there's no standing.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but you're not really telling me you're working with your partners, but you haven't said there's going to be increased enforcement. And the last thing I'll say is Lexington is not a comparison because it doesn't have a protected bike lane.
Yeah, totally agree. That's why we've also, you know, that's just a recent project within the community board, which, you know, had a similar shift from curbside to offset. So, you know, to use it as an example, you know, so people can have that visual in their mind of how it impacted, you know, traffic and, you know, the bus rider experience. And, you know, as I said before, you know, the area of First Avenue north of 79th Street is really a great example of, you know, similar land uses and traffic patterns, which we can use as a, you know, easy comparison and a goal with which to meet.
Thank you, Valerie. Michelle Birnbaum is next. Can we unmute Michelle?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so over the years listening to all these presentations, I have learned one thing, although I can't be defeated that easily, but DOT seems to get what DOT wants. And let's just hope that we can get it to fit with what the community wants. I'd like to point out that the numbers, the screen you have up, this data is from 2019. So certainly some of the new buildings have not been accounted for, in addition to one that's going to be going up on 79th and 1st, which will be an ambulatory medical facility, which also will add to the excitement and the confusion. As I was listening, correct me because I didn't quite understand. When you said that there were commercial meters for 2 hours and commercial meters for 3 hours, did you mean commercial parking? Was that to imply there are no meters for customers?
Yeah, so I will move back to so hopefully
one question.
Yep. Yeah, no problem. So this again is the existing curb regulations. So right now, you know, there's no standing when the bus lane is operating. Again, that morning peak is 7 to 10 a.m. and the evening is 2 to 7 p.m. So, you know, there should be no vehicles on the curb at those times, although, you know, we clearly see them. In the in-between time, so 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., right now, the curb regulation, so the signage is 3-hour metered commercial parking. And again, that's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Yeah, so when you, let me just interrupt 1 minute because this is what I want to clarify. Yes. When you say commercial parking, you mean trucks, delivery, literally that kind of commercial. And then you said that there are 2 hours metered parking only on Saturdays. So during the week, during the day, there is no ability for a client of a small business to park. We're just regular parking, regular metered parking. Where does that come in the course of the day?
So I just want to reiterate that this is the existing regulation. So it's what, you know, if you walk down First Avenue and you look up at the meter signs, like this is what they will say. And the intention is for those commercial uses.
So to answer my question, what you are proposing will have no parking for customers that are going into those shops or restaurants. Is that correct? Yes or no?
So right now, there should
Right
not
now,
be.
what you're proposing.
So right now, we're not making any change to, what private vehicles are supposed to be doing, what personal vehicles are supposed to be doing on the curb. We're not making any change to what they are allowed to do at all. So right now, commercial vehicles, right now it's for 3 hours, but let's just say in general, commercial vehicles are allowed to park on the curb in the midday period. As part of the proposal, I'm just going to go to this slide that you can see. So as part of the proposal, on those weekdays, we're still continuing that commercial metered parking. The difference will be the time frame, so extending it from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., which is obviously much greater than what it is right now at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And changing the time on some of those blocks that see higher deliveries. So we are not
2 hour metered commercial parking is parking for trucks and is parking for vehicles with commercial plates. Is that correct?
Yeah, so
Okay.
this is correct. And just to also be clear, a couple things. One, there's a lot we can do to try to, facilitate, private vehicles on side streets, and realize that demand is there. We do just see such an overwhelming demand for deliveries and trucks throughout the day, and we really want to. We're trying to balance the street, right? We really don't want those happening in the bus lane and the travel lanes. We've heard before about what a problem that causes. And so dedicating it for truck loading can have a real benefit there. I'll also say that this part of the proposal is, a big part that we're kind of really willing to get feedback on. So if there's specific blocks where you feel like, look, that block doesn't actually really, need a lot of, commercial loading, let us know. And those are things that we can try to incorporate and adjust. And we can also adjust, after things go in. If something's not working, we can really make an adjustment on that.
I appreciate that. And that's very good of you to offer that. But frankly, that should be part of your study and your inquiry. And you should have been talking to the small stores and the restaurants and asking them what they believe their need is for their customers to pull up for an hour, for 2 hours, to have dinner or lunch or whatever. And you're talking about doing compensative things on the side streets, but I don't see that that's part of this overall plan. So I would say, yes, that's kind of you to accept what we are suggesting to you, but I would also say that that's part of your responsibility to do that. This was a very easy fix for you. You closed off the whole street from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. with 2 hour metered commercial parking, meaning vehicles with commercial plates. That didn't take much research. So I think you want to go back to the drawing board. Now, let me ask you a very specific question that I think Valerie was trying to get to, but I would like a specific question and answer. And the reason is because in other bus corridors where you implemented these kinds of bus lane changes, your overall benefit to the speed of the line was 1 to 2 minutes. Now, that's why I'm asking you, in this particular effort on First Avenue, what do you expect is going to be the savings time from going from the beginning of the route to the end of the route? And I'll phrase it because I'd like to know the answer to that question and if you analyze the delays in the traffic in the other lanes. do you consider both? Because I can tell you, you use Lexington Avenue as an example. I'm on Lexington Avenue all the time. You've got to go back to the drawing board. Lexington Avenue is an absolute nightmare. You may think your bus is moving. I would love to know on Lexington what your savings in time is from the beginning to the end of that route as well. Because with the parking, the double parking of the deliveries, because we have a lot of stores there, we've got one lane of movable traffic. And Lexington Avenue is virtually a parking lot since you put this bus lane in. So sometimes when a bus shares the traffic lane with regular traffic, it increases the time from beginning to end of the corridor. It increases it for everybody. So to just look at the movement in the bus lane is not enough. You've got to look at the movement in the rest of the street. So can you give me that answer about First Avenue? How many minutes is this going to increase bus traffic from the beginning to the end of the route? And do you have that answer now for Lexington as well?
So one thing I can point out is, we're definitely doing a full, there's a full traffic analysis that we always do with these projects. So to, look at the impact on traffic. The other thing is that, we're trying to, there's a lot of demand for movement on the streets, right? There's a lot of people on the buses, a lot of people in cars. And one of our goals is to really move as many people as efficiently as possible. And so sometimes this will mean, we try to mitigate everything as much as possible and want to continue to keep traffic moving smoothly. But even those kind of what sounds like smaller changes, 1 or 2 minutes, can really have a huge impact overall when you look at how many people are taking that bus every single day. And these small changes are not even just saving that minute or 2 minutes. It's also really, helping the reliability and making sure that buses are evenly spaced. And, we're kind of getting that benefit as much as possible.
Okay, so you can say to me that you are evaluating the traffic in the other lanes as well. Mm-hmm. Because frankly, in a practical way, empirically speaking, not statistically, but empirically, I don't see the improvements that you are getting or hope to get. So, because we all live here. And even though your aim is to move people as efficiently as possible, that means moving them mostly out of their cars and onto public transportation. However, that's not always a decision for you to make, because there are people who either want to be in their cars or need to be in their cars. So they have to be accounted for. And I hope you can get that information for us, because even in your explanation just now, you did not tell me the number of minutes. You just said that no matter how minimal the minutes are, they're in some way of benefit. I'm not sure about that. The last thing I'd like to say, and then there's other comments I'd like to make when you do your number 5th on the agenda for the updates, and I have a lot of commentary for that, but I just wanted to alert you, so I'll wait. I wanted to make an additional comment on 72nd Street. So we've been asking for 72nd Street for however long, as you know. The reason that you originally gave us is because there was no need. The use at that stop did not warrant having the stop. My contention is that it's a build it and they will come. There are people begging for that spot. It is not legitimate for you to say that it won't be used if you put it in. So and certainly years and years later now, that's even a much busier corridor than it was then. And there's a much bigger demand and need for that stop than there was then. And so I would venture to say that you would certainly find that people would be using it now. And certainly if it was there, people would be using it. You have many, many additional new buildings. You've got the subway, et cetera, et cetera. So I would encourage you to go back and look at it. And if it doesn't look like it's a good financial proposition because it's a waste of money, because you're going to be changing over, I would suggest that the city wastes a lot of money in a lot of different ways, and they should venture to get some money to complete this project. I wouldn't consider it a waste. So thanks for the presentation. Thanks for being here. I hope you take some of these comments into consideration, but I know that you're going to implement this, and then I look forward to hearing how you're addressing some of the mitigation that we have mentioned tonight. So thanks very much.
Okay, Peter Borak is next. Can we unmute Peter? He's unmuted, okay?
Thanks, Chuck. Michelle, well done. Hard act to follow. So I have a couple questions and a couple of comments. So one is on 72nd Street. Marcus, I'm having a hard time here. I usually give great deference to DOT and to MTA, probably one of the more deferential of the board members. I'm having a hard time here. On one hand, what I think I'm hearing you say is that the ridership, as you've looked at it, doesn't justify SBS stop at 72nd Street. But then this, basically the entire point of this presentation is that this is, in Manhattan, the single most heavily trafficked bus route. And previously in 2020, I think you said in the city, it's the most heavily trafficked bus route. It's really hard to kind of hear those in the same sentence. And I would just argue that, if you're looking at this and you're saying that the actual ridership is heavy on the local bus route, and we don't think that it's going to be there for the SBS, yeah, if you build it, they will come, right? So it's obviously, you don't have the counterfactuals, so you don't know that. So can you just drill down, because you and Valerie had a little bit of a soliloquy. Can you just restate exactly what the MTA's position here is on whether or when it would be willing to actually implement a SBS station on 72nd Street? I think sure. I can fully appreciate that.
Sure, no problem. So just to there's a difference between a bus stop usage and traffic flow and bus speeds, right? So bus speeds affect everyone along the route. Ridership at a particular stop, whether it be an SBS or a local, are different for different factors. Just so happens, and this is just a logical way people do things, use it. If you build it, they will come. If you provide a faster service at an SBS stop, that is where the service will be. That is where the ridership migrates, right? So that's what's occurred. That's where the ridership is. Currently, the way that New York City Transit cites bus stops and schedule stops are based on the demand at the bus stop. So right now, it's a local stop. Some people are okay with it. Some people think it's they have to wait too long for the bus. So they don't wait there. They walk to 72nd Street. Now, I understand that some people are not in a position to do that, but those are the facts on the ground, and that's how schedules are done, and it's based on the ridership. What we're doing now, and we've been looking at this we've been getting this request. It's been studied over and over and over again. And, frankly, to try to see if the demand is as intense as Community Board 8's advocacy for a bus stop at that location. And it just doesn't really bear out. And currently, we're in a transition right now to go to an entirely new fare payment system, okay? And we think it's appropriate that the true consideration for this stop, as we've already studied it over the years, and do not see the demand for an SBS stop there and changing the bus stop spacing, would be when Omni's fully on board, and that would be the time to do it. And again, we're also redesigning the bus network in Manhattan. So there'll be lots of discussion about this stop. I am positive of that, but we've been talking about it for years, and both in community board presentations and conversations, as well as in writing, letters, and there's been all kinds of arguments posed as to why, one side feels it should be there, and then our analysis. And we've been very clear about it over the years in both arenas.
Okay, I hear you. I don't think we accept that, but
Understood.
It is what it is.
I do. I understand.
To the DOT folks, thank you very much. I recognize it's 7:30 on a Tuesday and appreciate you being here. I recall meeting I don't recall if it was you or your predecessors when we talked about this for Lexington. And at the time, I thought it was a very good idea. As Michelle said, Lexington is basically a parking lot. And I guess one of the questions I have is, I think it was Rachel, I think you had said that it was either the estimate or looking at Lexington that bus speeds we would hope or expect or something would increase by 10%. Rachel, did I capture that correctly?
Yeah, so according to, the bus speed data, on Lexington Avenue, bus speeds improved 10% in the morning peak hours after the bus lane was shifted to an offset lane.
And out of curiosity, Rachel, did you have that corresponding data for the effect on the balance of non-bus traffic?
I don't have that on me, Kyle. Do you want to speak to this or have anything to add?
Yeah, we don't have that on hand. It's something we do look at for a lot of our projects. You're right. That's one of our goals is to move as many people as possible. This is a very busy bus route, so it's just to kind of dedicate one of the 4 lanes to buses. The other thing I would just point out, and I know this isn't directly answering your question, but I just want to make sure you mention that, is to meet kind of the level of service that's needed on this route and the number of riders, there's just a physically high number of buses on the route. So while it's kind of like, well, we're losing one travel lane, not completely, because of since the bus isn't able to use the bus lane so often because it's blocked with vehicles trying to access the curb, you're kind of pulling that bus out of the other travel lanes and giving it its own lane. So in some ways it is kind of a reorganization. So I just kind of wanted to make that point as well.
I hear that. I appreciate that. I don't think you guys are going about this in the way I would go about this for what it's worth. I think I don't know how you could make this decision without really appreciating the analog here, which seems to be Lexington, the closest analog. And as Valerie pointed out, it's not perfect, but it's a fair analog, without really understanding the effects on the balance of traffic, because the goal here really is to move people as quickly, as efficiently as possible. And so if you are going to, say the goal is to make the bus move quicker, and 10%, in reality, I think this is to Michelle's point, 10% is a decent number, but we're talking about 5 miles an hour or even 10 miles per hour. 1 mile per hour, it's in an hour, you'll have gone, 20 extra city blocks. It's not really that much. But if the effect is to slow down the balance of traffic, the other 4 lanes, by, some unknown factor, and we don't know what that is, I don't think you can really balance that. I think you have to look at the equities here. And I'm not saying it's the right or wrong decision, but I think you're looking at this with the absence of sort of the 2 relevant factors, which is we're going to hopefully increase bus speed by 10%. And we acknowledge that will have a deleterious effect on the balance of traffic. But, the mayor's prerogative is to increase bus traffic. And we appreciate that there will be a negative effect, but that's okay. We're going to weigh those 2 equities. But you have to know what that is, I think.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I mean, that's the main point I have.
No, it's a fair point. It's we're trying to do multiple things, right? We do have kind of, calls to move buses as quickly as possible in the city, and really, this is a kind of, more sustainable mode and something that we kind of want to, make more attractive for as many people as possible, and especially in the densest parts of the city, like the Upper East Side is. They are a little different too, Lexington and First Avenue. First Avenue, we're going from 4 travel lanes to 3. And so it is kind of less of a reduction. The point's taken though, and it's something that we can take into consideration as well.
Yeah, I would just say my big problem with this really is removing the traffic lane. And I appreciate that your point was, well, the lane's not really a real lane anyway. Seems like for two reasons. One is you have a lot of commercial vehicles parked there, so it's just we're gonna turn that to 100% commercial parking. Well, that's not a great answer, because let's just say trucks are improperly parking there now. For the period of time that they are not parking there now, we're losing that to that parking, which may or may not be used in the future. I don't know if that made sense, but it's not really a great answer in my book. And the other one is I appreciate that the buses are using the non-bus lane because they have to. But again, I just can't. I don't know. I was really in favor of what you guys did on Lexington. I thought that made sense at the time. But just seeing Lexington, again, it's not data driven, but just seeing it, and I'm in traffic there, and it's not moving. And I think maybe the pendulum has swung a little bit too far of removing lanes from traffic in the city. So I would vote, if there is a vote on this, I unfortunately would vote against this. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, Judy Schneider, I think is.
Chuck, sorry, do you mind if I just add one more comment?
All right, go ahead, Rachel.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to again bring up the bus speed map that we can see, pretty significant, a couple of miles per hour speed gains north of 79th Street, which really is the best comparison we can use, as it is similar land uses, same area, everything like that. And additionally, I just wanted to reassure you and other members of the community that when we look at our traffic analysis, we're not looking at the bus on DOT's end. We're looking at how general traffic moves with those changes to the roadway geometry. And so even though, the goal of the project is to move the bus faster, the goal of the traffic analysis is to understand how the general traffic moves as a result of the changes that we make. So that those mitigations would be for, moving the general traffic, as efficiently as possible.
So
we're going to move the Peter.
Very quick, 10 seconds. Fair point, Rachel. I would just say causation versus correlation. There might be other reasons why the speed is double, other than just the bus lane. I would urge you to look at that.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Let's go to Judy Schneider now. And you, Judy.
Good evening. Thank you for your presentation. I have 5 quick questions. Let me ask them all at one time and comments, and then you can answer them. My first question is, when do you plan to implement this plan? Because there's been no comment about that. Secondly, I think it was Kyle who said in the course of conversation, we're going to look at the west curb. I don't know what you're looking at the west curb for, because we have a bike lane there. So I don't know what you could do with the west curb unless you're planning on removing the bike lane. Also, I wanted to know, you had a sign there showing the different blocks where the 2 hours and the 3 hour parking would be implemented, depending what kind of store was on a particular block. Will each of those blocks have different signage at the meters? Will they say this is 2 hour parking on this block, and the next block it'll say it's 3 hour parking? If that's the case, I want to know if all the blocks are being marked. And then will this bus lane be repaved? I'm sure it's going to be painted. Will it also be repaved? I don't know if that's a question for Colleen. And my last comment is that you're starting this at 61st, 62nd Street. At traffic hour, we have a really horrendous problem at 61st and 62nd Street. Crossing First Avenue, the crosstown traffic can tie up those 2 blocks trying to get to and from the bridge. So is there any part of your plan, this plan, to put in permanent traffic control agents at 6-1 and 6-2 on First Avenue? Because otherwise you may have a bus at 61st Street just sitting there, not being able to get through the intersection at 62nd. So those are all my questions.
All right, thank you so much, Judith. So just to start out, the implementation is planned for this fall, so fall 2022 is our hope. Then let's see, your other questions is what is on the west curb. So I'm just gonna move back a few slides so we can see the layout of the street. Sorry, everyone, for all of the jumping around. So you can see here that, sorry, I know this is tilted, but so you asked what's going on the west curb. How could anyone look at it? Because it is a bike lane. So sorry, this is a little bit of a misnomer. So it's might not be directly against the curb, but we do have parking, floating parking. And so, sorry, that is what I was talking about when I mentioned the west curb. Sorry for any confusion. So we would be looking at the regulations on those parking spaces, essentially. So not touching the protected bike lane, which is, heavily used as everyone in the area knows. Okay, moving to so then your next question was on the curb signage for the different blocks. So yes, because we are, well, right now, the signage always reflects the regulations on a given block for, a given area. And so as a part of this project, when we do update, or if we do update those curb regulations, yes, there would be new signage and different signage depending on the regulation per block. So, you would always be able to look up at the signage, adjacent to the curb to see, what is and is not legal, what is and is not allowed, just as in, blocks all across the city. Obviously right now, First Avenue is, pretty consistent. So it would look, a little different, but still the signage would be relevant to the given block. So if it was 2-hour parking, it would say 2-hour metered commercial parking, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. If it were 3-hour, it would say 3-hour. So there, shouldn't be any confusion there. I don't know if, okay, so then moving on to your fourth question about the bus lane repaving. So yes, of course, the plan is to repaint. I don't believe there are plans for repaving, but Colleen, if you want to speak more to that.
Hi, Judy, it's Colleen. How are you? So when we implemented and made the changes on Lexington Avenue, we didn't do any repavement. All what we're going to do is implement new markings, and that's what we're going to do. You asked about traffic enforcement agents at 61st and 62nd on First Avenue. I mean, that is something that we can look into, given that there's a whole new design and we're talking about improving and enhancing the bus lanes. So we'll be more than happy to reach out to TEA to see if we can get an agent there, okay?
Yeah, I think that's really very important. If you expect it to run, the bus to run smoothly on those two blocks, and even 63rd Street becomes a problem, though 61, 62, 63, as you know, are the bridge entrances and exits. And without an agent, when there's a lot of traffic, the intersection is blocked in one direction or the other, mostly crosstown.
Okay, we'll work on that. Thanks, Judy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of public members who I'm going to recognize. Andrew Fine, I believe, is next.
Thanks, Chuck.
Okay.
Appreciate it. I'll be brief. First of all, I just wanted to say that I would second more or less everything that Valerie, Michelle, and Peter had to say regarding the 72nd Street SBS stop. I feel like on one hand, we have the DOT and their infinite knowledge with either shaky or unavailable statistics versus the community, which doesn't seem to be heard in this situation, which is saying loud and clear, we want an SBS stop at 72nd Street. And the reality is that 72nd Street is a major thoroughfare. There's been a ton of growth in the area. And the MTA spent $4.5 billion to put a subway stop on 72nd Street. And for that not to connect with a bus makes virtually no sense at all. I wish the DOT in the situation wasn't being as obtuse as it has been, and I hope they hear the community. In terms of commercial only parking on First Avenue, it's a really, really ineffective tool to alleviate truck traffic in the area. The main problem there is that there's virtually no enforcement of double parking rules. Apparently to unload or load, whether you're Fresh Direct or Amazon or whatever, doesn't even get you a ticket anymore. So in the case of Lexington Avenue, for instance, today on Lexington Avenue between 83rd and 84th, there was a D'Agostino truck in the second lane of traffic. There was a FedEx truck in the UPS truck in the second lane of traffic. And guess what? The commercial spots were completely empty. They just park in the second lane out of convenience because they don't want to be blocked in. Meanwhile, inconveniencing virtually every other person that uses the roadway. So commercial only parking has to be looked at in terms of, if you're not enforcing double parking, the commercial parking will just take place in the second lane. Finally, I just hope that the DOT decides to listen to the community. I think it's kind of loud and clear and more or less unanimous. And I would urge you to please put an SBS stop at 72nd Street where it makes sense and where there's the traffic to support it. Thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you, Andrew. Then Wendy McIver, I believe, had her hand up the next.
It was actually Andrew Rabishir with Wendy McIver, and it may take them a second to unmute.
One of you.
They're in the same computer.
One of you should speak then. Okay. Okay.
I'm
Whatever.
speaking. Hi,
Go ahead.
thank you for letting. So can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak, and thank you for this presentation and holding this forum. I live right on First Avenue, and I've been taking just informal data ever since I saw that this proposal was coming up about altering the bus lanes. I exercise in the morning and my route is on First Avenue. I exercise in the evening, my route is on First Avenue, right supposedly where the bus is really slow. And then also my bedroom window looks right out onto First Avenue when the bus lane. And while most of First Avenue, especially after the bike lanes, can be really traffic heavy, the buses usually zip along with no interference. And so what I'm wondering is, why is taxpayer money being spent changing this bus lane as opposed to A, getting us more buses because we desperately need more buses, and B, investing in the technology that tells us on the monitoring board when buses are coming actually in an accurate fashion? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Anyone want to respond to that on DOT?
Sure, I think there's a couple things we can. One, I guess of course, anecdotal, like the evidence that you have is very useful for where you see the buses slow. We do see that the buses are. I'm getting some feedback. Is that? We do see that the buses are. I'm getting feedback. Is that?
That's coming from Andrew. So Andrew, I'm going to go ahead and mute you.
That's coming from Andrew. So Andrew, I'm going to go ahead and mute you.
So mute them, yeah.
I have. Okay. It takes a second to register.
So, Rachel, do you mind going to the bus speed slide really quick? I understand at times the buses might be moving all right, but there are many times, when, like we see in the AM peak and midday, it's moving 7 to 4, 5 to 2 miles. 7.4 or 5.2 miles per hour, which is pretty slow. As far as the kind of information when the buses are coming, we do have the real-time passenger information poles that we've installed at many bus stops. We're continuing to expand that program, working on kind of a next generation of that program as well, which should be able to expand that as more. So that's something we want to do in addition. I guess we don't look at it as an either or thing. So we kind of have multiple goals here. And I don't know if there was another question I missed. Maybe not. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Kyle. All right, Rebecca Lamort has not spoken before, so let's unmute Rebecca.
Hi, thank you. Clarifying question. Can DOT, MTA please clarify what they meant as how they count the floating parking lane as curb space for a bus to offload? It seemed. I'm concerned about what this will mean for seniors in our neighborhood getting off the bus, myself and others as disabled New Yorkers. We're just going to be crossing an active bike lane to offload. Can you clarify?
Yeah, hi Rebecca. Sorry for any confusion. So the bus travels along the east curb. You can see in the existing condition right now, it travels in the bus lane, which is right up and adjacent to the east curb. So part of the proposal is to move the bus lane, not the bus stop, just the lane into the first travel lane that you can see on the lower screen. But, you know, for pulling into a stop, the bus still pulls to the curb so that, you know, passengers can accessibly reach the bus to or from the curb or vice versa. When we were talking about the floating parking along the west curb, you can see it's a little, it might be a little bit confusing here. So I'm going to just move to a later slide so that you can see. So the west curb in this picture or in this rendering is on the lower portion of the screen where the bike lane is. And that the bus doesn't travel on that side of the roadway. It travels on the east side of the roadway. Right now, the right up against the west curb is the bike lane, and then the floating parking, which you can see these like grayed out cars that are closest to the bike lane. Those are just representing parked vehicles, which, you know, replicates the like west curb. So, you know, the west side parking on the street is not actually against the curb. But again, this that isn't actually, that is something that will be looked at in the future as a part of this project. It's just the east curb where we're making any changes. And again, the bus will fully pull to the curb into those existing bus stops to load and unload passengers so that they can reach the curb fully accessibly.
Thank you, very helpful. And can you just clarify, you're saying that then that curb closest though to the floating parking and bike lane will be revisited at a later date as it relates to the to the bus lane?
So not as it relates to the bus lane, just as it relates to, you know, parking and commercial loading needs. Since there is such high demand on this corridor, it is something that will be looked at in the future. Again, not by our unit, so not by transit development and not in relation to the bus lane directly. Obviously, all of these things kind of work together, you know, for general traffic flow and commercial loading needs. But the bus lane and any changes to the bus lane won't be happening in effect of they won't have any impact. Sorry, any look at the west curb won't affect, you know, any changes we have made to the bus lane, and it won't recommend any additional changes to the bus lane. Does that help clarify?
Okay. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to be sure when you hear about crossing, you know, floating parking lanes and this and that, I was like, the bus lane is on one side of the street now. We just got to confirm we're not getting too crazy.
Yes,
so thank you.
Sorry for any confusion.
Craig, you want to say something, Craig?
I was actually going to let Mohit speak first since he raised his hand. Before I make my comments.
Hey, thanks, Craig. I'm a new member here of CB8, so I really appreciate you know, meeting the NYC DOT and the MTA folks here in the fall. really impressed by the amount of work that's gone into this, and I know the amount of work that goes into the work that you all do every day. So thank you for being here. Just a few questions. From my general framing here is that I agree with the mayor's general stance that we need to improve the city's bus system. So with that in mind, I'm generally favorable to the kinds of ideas that are being put forward here. I think kind of collating some of the comments we've heard from public members and the community board. I think it would be helpful and important for us to be able to see some of these results from the traffic study. And so if I understand the process correctly, I would anticipate that some kind of traffic study will be undertaken over the next few months as part of the planning process. And so would there be an opportunity for unless the DOT and the MTA to come back in a few months with some better information with various types of data in terms of average speed for the buses if the bus lane is moved out and number of passengers will be served, the additional number of passengers will be served, the impact on the travel lanes in terms of passenger vehicles, commercial vehicles, et cetera. And then in addition, some real world, pre and post data from Lexington Ave. That seems to be the best comparable we have in the area, and can speak to the lived experiences of individuals who are in the communities. And so now I feel like some of that information can be really helpful to make sure everyone here fully understands the impact of what is being proposed. And then just one last point on the SPS at the 72nd Street intersection. I just took the M15M off camera because I'm walking outside. I just took the M15 south from 125th to 57th on 2nd Ave. So fully appreciate the convenience of that service. The for the 72nd Ave, 72nd Street stop, the potential stop there, would love to see any kind of demand simulation or study that has been done or could be done, particularly with the new sources of traffic in the area in terms of new development, et cetera, and to really understand, how that demand differs or is less than whatever relevant benchmark there is in place for adding this SPS stop. And so again, presumably you're understanding my take here, which is that I love to see the data. I want to make sure we all have data before we jump to conclusions. But in general, thank you very much for this presentation. I really do appreciate the work going into improving the city's bus systems.
Thank you, Mohit. Craig, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Chuck. I want to just first thank everyone who's here from New York City Transit and New York City DOT for the presentation and for taking the time on a Tuesday night to spend with us and to have to respond to a lot of good questions that were asked and concerns that were raised. I want to start by, I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to ask again. I have requested in the past ridership data for bus stops for Community District 8. And I know in the past it was a little more complex because it involved modeling and such, but I know that there are now automatic passenger counters on buses, and I know the data is more readily available. And I am asking again and begging you to please provide us with that information. So not only just to be able to look at 72nd Street, but just to look at the district holistically. And so as a bus planner, I would love to be able to help our community understand what our needs are for bus planning and bus operations, both in relation to upgrades such as this proposed project and for other initiatives that are going to be coming down the pike. So again, can you provide that to us? And I'm asking here, I'm hoping that someone can provide an answer.
DOT, is that DOT or
Marcus or Laura? I don't know if
Marcus or Laura
want to speak to that.
And we have written a letter in the past. So if you ask me to write a letter, I'll just point to the prior letter.
Noted, Craig. Thank you.
So Laura, does that mean we can get that? We'll get that data?
I cannot make any promises on this meeting. I can promise to bring that to the people who can answer that question now.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, try to get back to Will if you can on that.
Right, because I don't think we ever heard back from our previous requests. One other question is, you mentioned the Manhattan bus redesign that is coming up eventually, and that it would be after the Brooklyn redesign is complete. Can you give us a little more clarity as to when approximately that is anticipated?
Marcus, that would be you.
Okay, yeah, this unmuting thing is pretty tricky. Chuck, yeah, Craig, all I can tell you right now is we announced, I think yesterday, we're initiating the Brooklyn redesign. Okay, so then first there would be an initial report on that. And when that's finished, and this Brooklyn redesign started right after our Queens and Bronx redesign was completed. So I don't have a timetable for you today as to how long that's going to take or where that's going to fall, but it's going to follow the Brooklyn redesign.
But does that mean follow it in terms of after it's implemented or after the actual study is completed?
No,
so
after it's implemented.
So we're talking 2 to 3 years down the line if using Bronx and Queens as examples.
Sure. I mean, if you use those as examples, yes. But best practices we learn from the previous redesigns, and it's possible this one will go smoother and go faster. But it really depends on the community's response to these things, right? So each borough is different.
Right, but I think I just want to set expectations. So when we talk about it coming up next, it's not in the near term, it's a little further behind. I just want to make sure that everyone understands.
Yes, you have it right.
Okay, thank you. All right, my next question, just in general, and this now gets back to the 72nd Street question. So how long does it take to implement an SBS stop? And I'm talking about to perform the design and engineering aspect of it in terms of both redesigning intersections as necessary and designing the bus bulbs and everything else required to upgrade a stop to an SBS. How long would that take in general, theoretically? I'm not even talking about 72nd Street in particular.
Laura, I'm going to pass that one to you.
Craig, I am not an SBS project manager, so I do not want to give you the wrong information. I could say that each stop has unique conditions that have to be addressed in terms of building out, connecting to electrical conduits and such. I'm really not an expert and I don't want to misspeak.
Right, but it's clearly not an overnight project. It would take some time. Because again, I'm thinking longer term in terms of timeframes, and Marcus having said that this is likely to be revisited once Omni is fully implemented. And I know you said otherwise, but I do have to imagine that to some extent. I know that there's very limited infrastructure in terms of vending machines that would be used to provide SBS tickets, and I'm assuming that is part of the reason why you're looking to wait until Omni is complete, because then you don't have to worry about where you're going to find the equipment for an SBS.
That's part of the calculation, Craig. You're correct.
Okay, so because I want people to understand that we've passed a resolution and I'm interested in trying to help the community get what it's asking for. I just want people to know what this involves and what we're facing in terms of the challenges here. So I appreciate that. All right, so now just moving back to the First Avenue proposal. So would it be fair to say that one bus lane can move nearly as many people as one vehicle lane on First Avenue? Because I was looking at the First Avenue traffic volumes earlier, and it looks as if that First Avenue sees at maximum about 1,800 vehicles an hour, or that would be about 600 vehicles per lane. And I could imagine that the bus lane could move 600 passengers during the busiest hours, which I believe is like during the 8 o'clock hour, when I think there are 30 buses that are programmed to operate within Community District 8 on First Avenue.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, like, and you're right. Like, with 48,000, riders per day, in the busiest times, that the bus lane moves more people more efficiently than the vehicular lanes.
Right, and I apologize. It was the 8 a.m. hours. He's 26 buses moving along First Avenue, and just so everyone knows, over the course of the day, I calculated 170 SBSs, 132 local buses, for a total of 302 buses over a 24-hour period. All right. So, and then I just wanted to say that I want to just publicly invite both New York City DOT and New York City Transit to come back and provide us with a presentation on the Lexington Avenue bus lane. I know that that was part of our resolution. Perhaps, don't quote me on. I know we've made that request in the past, that a year afterwards that we'd have a presentation. So I just like to make that invitation in a public forum. So I'm hoping that you'd be able to hopefully come back in the fall.
Yeah, we should do that. I
yeah.
think there was in our resolution, Craig.
I thought it was also. And then I would just like to say, for context, I don't think Lexington Avenue is really a fair comparison in terms of looking at what the impacts of this project may be. Lexington Avenue just has a very different built environment. It's a narrower street with other challenges. It does not have select bus service on there, so bus speeds can't even be compared in the same way, because you do have more frequent stops there and not nearly as many limited buses as compared to local buses. So I'm not sure that that's what we should be using, but again, I look forward to a presentation where we could do that. And then I just want to make one last comment, and I guess I should step aside saying this, not that I'm saying anything so controversial, but I think we could all agree on the importance of a reliable and effective bus system. And I hope we can appreciate that DOT and New York City Transit are looking to make improvements wherever possible. And putting aside the 72nd Street issue, I hope we don't minimize the work being done to improve bus service, and can separate some of the issues we discussed with the broader corridor improvements that will hopefully help bus riders and other vehicles alike by reducing conflicts caused by double parking, and to the improvements that would be provided just from being able to increase speeds incrementally. Because yes, it is an incremental change, but for the passengers that are using that, and it's a lot of passengers, as we discussed, more passengers on First Avenue on buses by far than probably people in vehicles. If I believe I looked at vehicle occupancy rates average about 1.3-ish per vehicle. So even if you extend that out, there are more bus passengers on First Avenue than passengers in vehicles on the course of a given day. And I just want to emphasize that I believe that bus lanes are a critical element of policy to ensure that buses remain vital and attractive. And I would hope that we can get behind that, because the city and our district and our district's bus passengers really need a efficient and reliable bus system. So I just wanted to make those comments. So again, thank you everyone for indulging me, and thank you to everyone who's participated tonight.
Thanks, Craig. Listen, we're an hour and 40 minutes into this, and I think I want to call a halt, frankly, to this and see, are the departments looking for us to take any action on this tonight? I know we've heard your presentation, and is that something that you want at this point, or do you don't think it's necessary? We could choose to do it anyway, but I just would like to get your thoughts.
Colleen, I don't think we were asking for a vote, correct?
Okay. So why don't we call a halt so that everyone has spoken, and I'd like to move on to item number 2 on the agenda, and thank the New York City Transit for their coming here and their presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Good night.
Let's go to a public hearing now on a revocable consent application to construct, maintain, and use a stoop and fenced-in area at 890 Park Avenue. Is there anyone here to present on this item? Will, do we have anybody?
I would like to ask that if you are presenting on this application, use the raise hand feature so we can find you. The two people I had been communicating with on this project, I do not see them. Okay, Shay.
Shay Murdoch, I see.
Shay, go ahead and unmute.
Hey.
Yeah, Shay, is there anybody else joining you in your presentation?
No, there's not, just me.
Okay, great.
Okay, why don't you go ahead, take it away.
Okay, great. Okay. Right. So I would share a screen, right? Similar to any Zoom meeting.
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. Okay. So I have to get the file underneath. Where are you? There we go. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great, okay. All right, firstly, I learned a lot about buses and I'm glad I ride a bike and I hope that you get a SBS service on 72nd. My sincere wish. Any case, this is 890 Park Avenue on 79th, between 79th and 78th. And it's a townhouse from the mid 1800s. It was a group of townhouses. I think there were 5 of them. This is the only remaining one. And obviously at the time there was a stoop that went up to the level you see here where it says 890. And then when the enlargement of 890 of the width of the widening of Park Avenue, the stoops were all removed, obviously. And we are now renovating this and reintroducing a stoop. The stoop is obviously smaller because of the narrowness of the sidewalk. And we have gone through LPC commission level approval, DOB approval, and now we're at revocable consent for DOT approval. So the existing conditions at the top, where you would go down into below the former stoop into the garden level, and there was a window well that is now, that was a sidewalk grate, is being replaced with a small stoop to bring you up 3 steps to enter at just 3 steps above the sidewalk level, and a window well to the existing windows with a garden in front in place of a sidewalk grate that is currently there to a window well. Existing elevations. The red indicates the area that is encroaching into beyond the property line. So we've got a small stoop, 3 steps up, brownstone, wrought iron railing to a garden area and the light well, replacing the sidewalk grate that's there now. Some small sections. So the existing is, you can see you come down into the old garden level. Now you're coming up 3 steps. The window well, which is currently a sidewalk grate, the full width, extending 5 feet from the face of the building, is being replaced by a small garden area and a narrower window well that is 2'6" down to the window. So we're trying to get some plantings behind a graded area, and behind a wrought iron railing to improve the visibility from the street. So existing, that says proposed, that's mislabeled. Left is proposed, right is existing. And I think I have a quick rendering to show just what it would look like. Moment. So that is the proposed.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. Don't see anyone from the public want to comment on this application? I didn't see anyone. Will, did you see anybody?
No, I don't see anybody, but I'll always remind that if you'd like to participate, go to the reactions icon and press the raise hand button.
Okay, the board members, let's go to the board members yet. Michelle Birnbaum.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you. Can I ask you, Shay, what your relationship is to this project? Are you
I'm
the architect?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm the architect. Yeah, I'm the
Okay, I just wanted to know that.
Yeah.
Do you have the old tax photos?
I don't have them available right now, but the old tax photos are the one on the lower left corner right here. So so if I can zoom in, maybe. Here we go. This is the old tax photo here.
Okay, do you know roughly what year this was?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
All right. All right.
50s, I want to say the 50s. Although I'm looking at some of the cars, it might be
50s?
even older, 30s. Just from the car style, I'm looking.
Oh, I would think it was earlier than the 50s, but anyway.
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
think it is the 30s
right.
actually.
Yeah,
Looking at the cars.
so we don't really see the stoop, and I see the windows above have 8/8s. Is that what was in the lower part, 8/8? Well, I'll ask you a few questions, but then a couple of general comments. First of all, I think you need to come to the Landmarks Committee.
No, we've done this. We've gone. This is LPC, CB8 approved, LPC commission level approved, DOB.
You were at the landmark.
approved.
Okay, you were at
Oh
the
yeah, we've done
Landmarks
all of that. The only thing that
Committee
we have
of
not
CB8?
done. Yes, all of that. We're done with that. We're under construction. The only thing we have not done was DOT because there was something with the LLC and it took a while for us to get DOT revocable consent. That's the last piece to this puzzle.
Okay, well,
But we
I'm
have
on that
LPC
committee and I'm just not remembering this, so I'm surprised to hear you say that you came to our actual committee. Do
We
you
did.
remember
Friends
when?
of the Upper East Side, 2017.
No, Friends of the Upper East Side is not CB8.
No, I know. We did CB8. We've done all of this. We went in front of the commission.
It looks
Okay,
like
well,
there,
we'll look it up. Okay.
it looks like August 2015, there was a resolution passed regarding 890 Park Avenue. And that involved the exterior, that was work
Yeah,
on exterior window replacements, and work on the roof.
That's
Well,
right.
that's
We're
not
almost
this.
finished with this.
Okay, well, let
Well,
me
did
just,
that include, did the exterior work
That
involve
included
this?
the stoop. That's correct. Yes, it included
All
the
right.
stoop. We went through CB8 already for LPC design, for landmark design. We've done that.
okay,
What
I
we
have
don't
to-
what we don't have is DOT revocable consent.
I get it.
Now,
I
now
get
that
it.
being
all we
said,
don't have right
it was disapproved by our landmarks committee, but it did
Okay.
go through the committee.
Okay, so that's a disapproval, and it's 8 years ago. Are you saying today that this is exactly the street level? I'm not talking about your roof or whatever. Is your presentation 8 years ago, is today's presentation the exact same presentation?
There might have been a modification.
Like what?
with LPC. Not to the extent, not to the stoop, but again, it was 8 years ago. So it was.
So can you tell me, you're coming to us today about the stoop and creating an areaway and rebuilding front steps. That's what you're here for today. So since this is in a landmarks district, the question is, when you claim you came to CB8's landmarks committee. I take you at your word. I have to say 2015, I do not recall this. So what I'm asking you is if there were changes from then, 8 years ago today, you're saying yes, there was a modification. Can you tell me what that modification is?
And just before you say that, I just want to be clear. So I'm looking at the resolution from August 19th, 2015. And it, as I said, it was a disapproval, although the disapproval was related to concerns regarding things that weren't in relation to this stoop in the front facade. It was in regards to the proposed changes at the penthouse and at the rear elevation being out of context and inappropriate within the historic district, which has nothing to do with what we are actually talking about tonight.
Okay, but that resolution was in its whole. It wasn't, you're reading a whereas. Excuse me, Shay, it wasn't broken up into parts A or B, right, Craig?
No, it wasn't.
Okay, all right, so let me just deal with what we have here.
Yeah, fair enough. But the stoop was supported by CB8 landmarks subcommittee at the time.
It couldn't have been. It couldn't have been unless that resolution was broken into two parts. When it was disapproved in its entirety. Okay. Now, the whereases may have been explicit in calling out the roof and certain things appropriate to the front facade. But if it was the intent of the committee to approve the new areaway and entrance, then the resolution would have been broken down into two different parts to get those two different resolutions. So the fact that it was a disapproval does include what you're presenting here today. So having said that, we will rule on it here, I imagine, in accordance with what the co-chairs say, but it would still be following today's resolution. To me, it is still appropriate for you to go before the CB8 Landmarks Committee in 2022 if you want a chance at having an approval of this. Otherwise, that disapproval of the building of what you proposed in its entirety still stands. Now, let me just ask you some information about this. Number one, the dimensions. So when you bring the steps up, are you now going to be raising the first floor?
Let me go back to the plan so I can look at it. Yes, well, you come in, okay, so the interior, you are coming in 3 steps up into a vestibule. From that vestibule, you make your way up to the parlor level or down to we're basically transitioning to the existing parlor level, which we're not changing, or we're not changing the window elevation in any case. And the basement level, also not changing. But we're making that transition interior as opposed to exterior. So you go in at a mid-level and down to the garden level or basement.
How many feet are you raising it? How many feet are you raising that door? How many feet are you raising the door?
Let me go to the next slide. Hold on. 111 1/4 off the sidewalk.
The door, 1 foot, 11 inches.
The door. So the door that exists now is not a door. The door. The basement level door. That is the old garden level door.
Whatever you're showing us.
I don't know the exact dimension. Yeah. So that
you're showing us the area that you're proposing to change, correct? And that area in your picture A and in your picture B that's in front of us.
Yes.
And I assume that that door is the main entrance to this building. Is that correct?
Well, yes, but it was
Okay.
not the original main entrance to the building because there was a stoop on the building.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but it is the main entrance to the building from which the stoop at that location was removed.
Yes.
So whether or not there was a stoop or not a stoop, this is the main entrance of the building, correct?
Yes, that we are not
Okay.
changing.
And now illustration C, go back,
Yep.
that I'm looking at, that is currently your entrance to the building, correct?
That is currently the same location of the entrance. Yes.
Yes.
We're
And
not
that
changing that.
location is marked in red in illustrations A and B, correct?
That's correct. That
Okay.
is.
So if you're lifting that door, if you're raising it so that it remains regular door height, which, 7.5, 8 feet, whatever it is, you're raising it so that now steps will go up to it. When you get inside, then the ceiling height in the interior, it would seem to me, would have to be raised. Is that?
This is the new entrance here. So we are coming up and we are taking over that entire up to the top of the parlor floor where it was before.
So what I'm asking you, okay, how many feet are you raising the door? You have to increase the entry size. You have to cut out what was there, right? You have a door entry, but it's too low down. So you have to cut out an additional opening for the door. How many feet additional is the cutout for that door?
Well, we're removing the entire basement floor so that you come in at a mid-level and our ceiling is the same ceiling as the parlor floor.
But that may be, but on the exterior of the building, outside, forget your inside, in order to make this door functional, you have to do additional cutout, do you not?
No, the cutout is there. We're making a new opening. Okay, let me see if I can explain this in a section.
Well, the opening, I think we're using opening and cutout in the same way.
Okay, I think I can answer the question if I go to the next slide.
Yes, you have it here. You have proposed elevation incorrectly. We understand that's your existing.
Yes.
Okay, that's your existing. So look where the door height is.
Right.
Now
and
look at your
That's right. We're
proposed.
replacing that second story window door thing that was left over with a new entry door.
Correct.
At 2 feet above the sidewalk.
So you're only raising that door 2 feet?
Well, no, because the door is about 2.5 feet below grade right now. You go down 5 steps.
Correct. So now you have to bring it to grade plus 3 steps.
That's correct. Yes.
So it seems to me you have to have an additional cutout, do you not?
I don't know what you mean by cutout. I mean, we're creating a new vestibule.
Look,
that is all
that's
interior.
not a complicated architectural term.
We're here about a revocable consent for the stoop. What happens inside?
I'm not asking you about what's happening inside.
But that's how we're solving the question you're asking, which is that
No, that's not how you're solving it. You have to be able to tell me, if you look at the existing, which includes a door that's down 3 or 4 steps,
yes,
and above it, that's either 2 single pane windows or a transom of some kind or whatever it is, you have to cut up and include that overhead transom and that door into your new door so that it becomes appropriately positioned above the 3 new steps that you're creating. Is that not correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so that if that's correct, I'm
So this
asking you,
section-
how many feet additional cutout are you doing? You should have it somewhere on your plans.
So
It's too
this-
small for me to see, so I
Yeah,
can't see.
I'm trying to see if this would answer the question. Right now, the sidewalk, okay. The sidewalk plane is at 73.7. The basement is at 72. So that is 3'5". That's the current cutout down to the ground of the basement level. And we're going up 2 feet. So the total difference between the existing basement level and the new entry level is 5 feet 4 inches.
So you're cutting out an additional 5 feet, or it's 5 feet minus the
No,
2?
we're raising it 5 feet. We're not cutting anything out. It is already cut out because it's a basement. You enter down these steps. If you look at existing section AA, you walk down 7 steps or whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3 foot. You walk down 3'5" into a basement. That's how you enter the building now. We're proposing that you walk up 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. So we're raising that door 5 feet 5 inches.
Exactly. That's so the new cutout will be an additional 5'5". Exactly. Okay.
Right,
Now
but we're
let's go to
utilizing the old opening. That's what
I
we're trying to
understand.
do.
You're incorporating the old opening,
Yes,
but
exactly.
you're expanding it. Correct. That's my question. Now, let's go to the infringement on the street. So you're going to convert it to 3 steps, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, in order to put those 3 steps, how much past the property line will those steps go?
5 feet 1 inch.
Okay, so 5 feet 1 inch past the property line.
Yes.
Okay. And then as you swing around to create your garden, that will also come out an additional 5 feet past the property line, because it looks like it's in
Yes,
keeping with the steps.
We're maintaining that, and that is where the existing window well is. So
Right.
we're not, the existing sidewalk grade comes out 5'6" from the property line. We're
Okay.
pulling that back to 5'1" or 5'1". I can't read it either. It's small. 5'1", and continuing that all the way across. So essentially, we're taking that sidewalk grade, unwalkable now, over and taking that dimension, and it becomes the stoop that brings us up 3 steps to a
Right.
new enlarged entrance.
Right. And the remainder after the steps, you now have wrought iron or some kind of iron
Yeah, wrought
fencing
iron
decoration.
and brownstone and plantings,
Okay.
as opposed to a sidewalk grade.
Now, are you keeping the windows in the window well?
Yes, those windows are landmarked and they're maintained and replaced.
Exactly as they are.
Yes.
And what is
well,
going
new,
to,
But yes,
excuse me?
new, but yes, landmark.
Are they, is the existing wood? The existing windows, are they wood?
They are landmark approved windows right now, so they're
You
all.
don't know if they're
full
wood?
Oh, no, they're wood windows, yeah.
That was
They're-
my
they're
question.
Marvin Wood, landmark approved wood windows, yes.
So you are replacing them in kind?
Yes,
Okay.
and those were approved at.
And what's the floor
in
of
the
this
FCC
area
plan.
way going to be made out of? Is it a flag, a bluestone? What is it?
Can we stick to, please, the issues regarding the?
We are. The
No, we're
irrevocable
getting into
trust,
design
it
elements.
deals with, it's not, no, it
We are
deals with
encroaching
this
5
area
feet
way and what
1.5
it's made
inches.
of.
Yeah,
Look, it's the same 5 feet 1 that it is now.
Yeah.
It's pulled back, it's 5 feet 1 in front of the door and pulled back from 5'6" in front of the grate to now where you have that garden area, 5 feet, 5
So
feet
you
1.
say the same as it is now, but if you go back, can you go back to the irregular, to the?
Listen,
picture
Michelle,
with the
we've already
persons
wasted a
stuck in?
lot of time. Michelle.
I don't
we've wasted
consider
lot
it
of
a
time.
waste, Chuck, when I'm asking questions. Okay,
Yeah, I
that's
know,
not a
but
waste.
this-
I want to know.
It is, to
because
this
you
length,
say-
we've already
you
gone
say it
on.
is
Wait a minute, Michelle,
existing, and
stop.
there's nothing existing there. What's
There is a
existing?
grate, there's a grate there that
There's a
people
window
can
wall
walk
in the
on.
grate.
Okay, so I
And
said
it's
go
already
back to the
extends, it
picture.
already extends out 5 feet 5, he said, or 5 feet 6. It's
Can you
already
go
extending
back to the
further out.
original picture, please?
It's on the top of the same page that we're looking
Can I
at.
see the picture, please? Okay. This grate does not take up the entire area, does it?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
No,
that's
I
it.
didn't. No, I didn't.
Okay. And then if we are not to deal with the fencing or the bluestone or flagstone or whatever it is that you're using, then I will wait for this, or maybe I can, depending on how your resolution is going to read, I would only vote on that. And I strongly suggest that in the resolution that we send this to our landmarks committee. There's a lot here that has to do with landmarking, and it belongs in our committee.
There's already been a
we did that.
resolution. There's already been a resolution. Listen, Michelle, I looked at the resolution. It's right in the chat. They talked about this. That was not an objection. If there was an objection, it would have been in the whereases. It wasn't. And I don't, my own view is that we should just move on this revocable consent.
If it was approved, Chuck, it would have been mentioned in, because it was turned down. It specifically
No, that's
says
not
because
true.
of the roof.
That isn't true. That
The
isn't true.
whereas is explained the way Craig read it. The whereas is explained that it was turned down because of the roof. It says
That's right.
nothing
That's
about
right.
this. It was a complete turn down, and it was 8 years ago. I contend it
So
should
it
go
wasn't,
back
it was
to
seven, it was
landmark.
seven. First of all, it was not 8 years ago, it was 7 years ago, number one.
2015. Okay, 7 years ago.
That's August 17th, 2015.
7 years
And
ago.
it says specifically, whereas at the front, the applicant proposes to introduce a new stoop with 3 or 4 steps up to the new entryway, formerly at the basement level. That's what they mentioned that, but then they say, whereas the proposed changes are out of context and inappropriate. And that was the reason why it was disapproved. It was part of the, if they had something to, if the committee had something to say about that, I assume they would have said something about it.
How wide
it's
is
gone
the
to land-
street? How wide
hold
is the street?
I was there, and I can tell you that it was there's a visible penthouse addition. That was the objection.
Okay,
The
how
stoop
wide is the street?
welcomed by
Last question, how wide is the
welcomed
street?
the stoop, as opposed
Shay,
to this,
just to
they
answer the
welcomed
question,
it.
Shay, stop. Just
Sorry.
answer the question. How wide is the street there? That's what we want to know. Where does it go to?
How wide is the street?
To the curb.
Sidewalk.
To the
Oh,
curb.
to the sidewalk?
sidewalk.
The sidewalk, yeah.
Okay.
You have the dimensions there.
Yeah, I know. I just have to get to that page. Sorry.
I thought I saw 9-1,
It's 15-foot sidewalk,
and it would be 9-1.
10 feet, 10 feet past out 9/11 past our encroachment.
9/11.
9/11, yes.
All right, almost 10 feet past, right? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
We have a member of the public, I thought, that wanted to say something on this, but I don't see that member of the public anymore. Let's see. I don't see that. So Rita, Rita Popper?
I make a motion to approve the irrevocable part of this, the sidewalk part of this motion here. I mean, this program in front of us. I make a motion that we accept it as presented.
Is there a second to that then?
Can I get a thumbs up if you're seconding? Peter, thank you.
Peter, 4 seconds, okay. Okay, why don't we take a vote on this? So Craig, do you have the?
I'm just
attendance?
updating those who are currently here now. Let me just read the list. So it's myself, Chuck, Addison, Billy, Michelle, Mrs. Brown, Peter, Rebecca Dangor, Rebecca Lamort, and Rita. If I missed anyone, please, on the board, please let me know.
I think everyone else had to leave.
Okay. Okay, so all in favor of this, if well, I should say, those who are opposed or abstaining on this resolution, raise their hands.
If you'd like to vote no, abstain, or not vote for cause on this resolution, please raise your hand. We'll start with Michelle. Michelle?
No.
Thank you. I'm going to give it 3 seconds for
Anyone else?
anyone else. All right, it is approved with 1 no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is a public hearing on a revocable consent to construct, maintain, and use a fenced-in area, including steps and an accessible wheelchair lift at 26 East 78th Street. Is there someone here to present on that?
Drew, that's you, correct?
Yes, I should clarify. I'm the project manager on the project. I'm presenting on behalf of Drew Lang, who's the architect and the principal at my firm.
You're okay.
Yeah.
And you are Drew Lang, that's your name?
I'm not Drew Lang. My name is Leonardo Tamargo. I am the project manager at Drew's office for this project.
Okay, go ahead.
So let me see if I can share my screen over here. Okay. Can you all see my screen? Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So this project is a townhouse on 78th Street. It's 26 East, and the townhouse is being converted from residential townhouse into a commercial, including an art gallery. And you know that's all approved and is in motion. But the scope that I'm presenting here today is a smaller scope at the front of the townhouse. There was an original very small front yard with a couple of stairs going down and some fencing. And so this townhouse, by the way, was built in 1871. And what we're trying to do here is simply extending the depth of that, the dimension of that front yard, basically, but by just shifting all the 2 stairs and the fence to align with the rest of the neighboring properties, because they all are taking up a portion of the sidewalk already, whereas our building is kind of recessed. So we're just basically moving these all the way to kind of align with the neighboring fencing. And you know, one of the reasons to do that is so that we can more comfortably fit a wheelchair lift, because it is a commercial building. You know, we need to comply with ADA, and this is kind of the best place for a wheelchair lift versus, you know, other more clunky or chunky types of you know, lifting platforms. And that's pretty much. So this is on the left. You can see the original, and on the right, what we're basically just shifting the whole thing and giving ourselves a little bit more room here to walk around and to fit the lift, and you know, for a wheelchair to move around this front area. We are changing slightly some of the dimensions of the stairs just to be able to better accommodate the lift. And we're also, you know, just replicating the fencing. So if you look here, we're basically using the same style of fencing. By the way, this has been already approved by Landmarks. Not only our original project, which was larger and you know, included got renovation of the building, but also this amendment for the extended front yard. DOB has also reviewed the project, though that has been, you know, dealt with or coordinated with DOT, and DOB wouldn't approve this until DOT gives them, you know, official approval. So this, yes.
Are you, yeah, are you finished, Leonardo?
No, just last thing I want to say is that this lift is foldable. So basically, when it's not in use, it sits at the bottom of the landing here, and it's completely folded vertically, and it only unfolds and travels up the stairs when it's in use.
How much are you extending out, Leonardo? You said you're extending it out in the front to match the one, next door.
Yeah.
How much does that go out from?
It's
where it
5
is now?
feet, 5 feet and a quarter.
Okay. Are there any members of the public? I didn't see anyone here. Do you see anything, Will? No.
No.
Okay. Michelle? It's unmute, Michelle.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, so you're moving this over sort of horizontally, but how far past the property line is it? Did you say 5 feet? I didn't quite hear.
Yeah,
I didn't get what you said.
It's 5 feet and a quarter inch from the property line. We're moving it a little bit less than that. We're moving it just 3 feet, 6 and a half inches. It was already, the existing was already encroaching just a little bit into the outside of the property line.
So it'll now encroach 5 feet, 4 inches?
Total.
It was total. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what's the width of the street?
The street overall is 60 feet. The sidewalk, the sidewalk is let me add this up, is 14 feet and 11 inches. The sidewalk portion that we're leaving in alignment with the other neighbors is 10 feet.
I'm sorry, I didn't really get that. You have, your sidewalk is currently 11 feet and you're going to take 5 feet of it? Is that?
No, I think he said 14 feet, 11 inches, I thought he said.
Yes, correct.
14, and you're taking 5 feet of it, 5 feet of the 14, you're saying?
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's actually 14 and a half. We're taking 5 feet. I have it here that we're leaving 10 feet. There might be half an inch discrepancy there. I'm just looking at the drawings right now, but yeah, we're basically leaving 10 feet available in alignment with the neighbors.
What are the other red illustrations on here? What are they referring to?
Sorry, can you say that again? What illustrations?
The diagram we're looking at, the drawing.
This one at the top?
No, down in the middle in your main, that's it. And now that's what you're proposing. And then on either side, you have illustrations in red. What are they referring to?
Oh, and we were asked to draw in red everything that was either new to this filing or outside of the property line. What we have over here is one stair that goes down. Then we have, the renal that is not going to be replicated, replaced in kind, fencing over here. We also have fencing in around this middle portion, which is just a wall because the front yard drops from the level of the street. So we need a wall in between the two stairs and fencing for it. And then we have a second smaller stair on this side. We have the lift. And then at the end, we also have the replicated fencing on this extreme. We also have handrails for the stairs.
So on either side, way on the left and way on the right, does that fencing go past the property line?
Yes, this fencing over here already went past the property line in the renal, as this shows.
I can't see the measurements, I'm sorry. So how much past the property line did they each go?
So the same 5 feet because, yeah, it's the same 5 feet. It's basically aligning with the neighbor's fencing. So it's the same 5 feet.
Can you show us the regular photograph of the front?
Yes. So this is the front right here. As you can see, it's a little bit recessed in relation to the neighbors on either side.
Right.
This here is showing one neighbor to the east. And this is the fencing that I was saying, you know, is already, you know, that's one that we're just repairing basically.
Oh, so you're just repairing that. It's gonna, the measurement, the dimensions are exactly as it is now?
On this fence, yes, because we're only going out to match the neighboring fencing. And this fence that happens to be in our property only extends out to match the neighboring fencing already. Is this fencing in between our stairs? I don't know if you can see my pointer here. Yes. that we're shifting forward, because that's, you know, that's it's not entirely within our property line, but we're shifting it forward to match the neighboring fencing as well. And on this side, this is the west neighbor from property, and you can also see that their fence is already extending as well. And so we're just shifting everything to match both neighbors on both sides of our property.
And you'll put another fence on the right too, because you don't want to touch his fence. So you're going to put another fence that's just next to his, but the same dimension?
Correct. We're actually not just having another fence, but more so just the metal posts for basically for the railing of the lift, for the lift to go up and down. Yeah.
So a railing, not necessarily a fence.
Yeah, it does look like sort of yeah, it's basically a railing. Yeah, because what we have in our property there, if you let me show you this section here. So this portion here, which is a little bit back, is actually just a wall, is the neighboring wall. And then there's the neighboring fence. So that's already in place, so we don't need to, you know, close ourselves out on that side.
Okay, thank you. So you're extending nothing else, just making room for the lift.
Yeah, effectively, we're extending the surface of our front area. The main reason being being able to fit the lift comfortably. And then we're just shifting the two stairs and the fencing in the middle. We're just keeping the fence on this side as it is, just repairing it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Rita Popper?
Make a motion to approve the alterations as presented by the client.
Okay, any second to that?
Could we get a thumbs up from anybody who would like to second that? Craig, thank you. Okay, Rebecca.
Rebecca also did that, yes, okay. So why don't we vote on this? And is it anybody, do you have the role? Is everybody still here?
We've lost a few. So the current role is myself, Chuck, Michelle, Mrs. Brown, Rebecca Dangor, Rebecca Lamort, Rita.
Okay. All right. So anyone opposed or wants to abstain or not voting for cause, please raise their hand. I don't see anyone. So I think we're done. Thank you. Let's go to the next item, which is a request for change of on the East 82nd Street cul-de-sac east of East End Avenue, a request for a change of parking regulations from no parking to no standing. I think this is something we sort of discussed around here for a while, a little bit. So is there somebody here who wants to present that? Okay, is that
Tracy, and yeah, Tracy, go ahead and hit unmute.
Go ahead, hit unmute. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, good evening, everyone. My name is Claudia Ullman, and I'm here with Tracy Thatcher, and we are residents at 605 East 82nd Street. I'm going to give you a little bit of a sense of the existing situation, and then we'll just quickly give you our proposal. You might know that there are 5 cul-de-sacs which jut off of East End Avenue and connect to the East River Promenade. They exist at 80th Street, 81st Street, 82nd Street, 83rd Street, and 84th Street. In all cases where there are building entrances on those cul-de-sacs, there are no standing signs in front of the entrances, with the exception of our building, 605 East 82nd Street. So 33 East End Avenue has an entrance on the cul-de-sac of 81st Street. In front of their entrance is no standing. The Brearley School, which is 610 East 83rd Street, has their building entrance on the cul-de-sac, and in front of that entrance is a no standing sign. 10 Gracie Square has their entrance on the cul-de-sac on 84th Street. In front of their entrance is a no standing sign. We are the 4th and final building that has an entrance on a cul-de-sac. We are 605 East 82. We do not have a no standing sign. Instead, we have a no parking sign, which allows, as I'm sure you know, it allows for various permits to park there. We present this to you tonight with the understanding that there must have been some deliberation as to why the other entrances have no standing. We believe that that is because it makes it easier for emergency vehicles to get to the residential buildings that exist on those other blocks. And we would request the same consideration. The current no parking regulation has created a parking lot of permitted cars which block 605 East End Avenue, and I'm sorry, 605 East 82nd Street, preventing emergency vehicles from speedy and efficient access to our building and its residents. This is especially the case overnight, when both sides of the cul-de-sac are filled with cars with special permits. In the event of a fire, for instance, whilst residents sleep, it would be very difficult for fire trucks to fill the street and access the building with ladders. The cars that exist on that cul-de-sac make it unnavigable for emergency vehicles to either come down and or to turn around in our cul-de-sac. Also, you should know that the promenade at 605 East 82nd Street has a bicycle and an ADA handicapped ramp, with which we worked on with some of the members of this committee. The perpetual movement of cars in and out of the cul-de-sac creates a danger for the bikers who gather somewhat a modicum of speed as they come down the ramp. And it makes the 82nd Street cul-de-sac dangerous for those pedestrians, those people in wheelchairs, those people in walkers and those people with bicycles who are using the ramp. So we would like you to think about making our street more uniform in terms of the parking regulations, make it more uniform with the other cul-de-sacs, and also help the city as it moves forward to adopting a more pedestrian, ADA, and bike-friendly stance. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any, I see someone, Celeste, from the public wants to speak. Can you please?
Yeah,
unmute yourself?
hi.
Will you
No, I
identify,
to-
would
Oh,
you
can
identify
you hear me?
yourself? So could you
Sure.
identify yourself, Celeste, fully for the record?
Yeah, it's Celeste Garson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The host has asked you to start your video. Oh, I can. I have my kid around. So sorry. I'll do it later. Anyway, so I totally hear what you're saying. And I'm thinking on 82nd, I know there's on the other side, I know there's no standing against the promenade, but on other sides, I feel like in the entrance, but maybe I'm wrong. I feel like it's no parking anytime. But I'm just speaking on behalf of a family member who has a disability permit that would be affected by the change of regulations, because there are limited spots, and that person lives in this area. And on 82nd, there are no parking anytimes, but people never get ticketed. So people who need it aren't able to park there. So there's very limited spots where you can even park if you have a disability and you have been issued a disability permit. So I just want to make note of that. So then it would make it even more difficult to find a spot when you truly need it if you have a disability. And that's what, when you're issued those permits, it's specifically, those are for the spots for the no parking anytime. And if you made it no standing anytime, then you would not be able to park in those spots. And then there are like police officers, there are other people who have permits that can park in no standing anytime anyway. So even though you would, if you changed it, it's really, I feel like targeting people with disabilities, because if you changed it to no standing, other people have permits where they can't even park in those spots, and they do. So I just feel like I'm not like in favor, because I really feel like it would specifically be eliminating spots from people who have that permit, that have a disability.
Absolutely. Could I respond a moment?
Yeah.
And say
And they
that
have to ticket 82nd, because that's a huge issue, because that was a primary parking spot, and now the garage
Sure.
uses it and the whole world uses it, and I've complained.
Because
so.
if I could respond,
Yeah, sure.
I think it's a huge parking spot for people with permits, because it's one of the only cul-de-sacs that actually have no parking. Almost all the others have no standing. So it would be no surprise, right, that people with permits find 82nd Street appealing. I would suggest that in the very least, we could have a carve out like the Brearley School has. The Brearley School has their entrance no standing, and the rest of the block is no parking.
Right.
Allowing, so what we're asking for is in the very least a carve out for our building entrance, so that emergency vehicles like ambulances and fire trucks can get to us. Which, I mean, that the safety, our safety is of great importance.
Right. No, I get that too. I mean, I
that's
totally.
what I mean, you can go down to the cul-de-sac on 83rd Street, take a look. It's a nice carve out that they have. It doesn't eliminate all the no parking at all. So there's still permitted, spots there.
Right. I just
Are
think it
there
would be,
stops?
I get it, but
I don't want to
think
get
it's-
into discussion. Celeste,
Yeah.
hold 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
We get it back and forth here, but on 82nd Street, is it all no parking? And
No, there are half the block. The western half of the block is alternate side of the street parking. The eastern part of the actual cul-de-sac
right,
is no parking,
right,
including our entrance.
But everybody
okay.
parks.
So what you're saying is, if you did your entrance, then the rest of that area would still be no parking and could be
Correct.
permanent parking. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Why don't we move on? We'll get to you, Carolyn. Why don't we move on? There's another Sean McKillop, I think is next. Why don't we unmute Sean?
Yes, thank you, Sean McKillop. I wanted to just advocate on behalf of residents in the neighborhood who street park. I am a resident in the neighborhood. I am well aware of the permits that are being used by many cars, and some of them legitimate for situations such as disability. Others, have been in the news as having been abused. So it's a constant challenge. The amount of parking in the neighborhood has been limited and diminished by, everything from city bike to restaurants. And the latest thing seems to be these delivery zones where they put up a blue sign indicating there's no parking, so that the various delivery services can use it as, a sort of loading area. So it gets frustrating for people who rely on street parking. I just wanted to make sure there's about a dozen parking spots for alternate side of the street parking on that block, as has been identified by the other speakers. And I am very hopeful and want to advocate for maintaining as much as possible for street parkers in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Sean. Next, we have Lorraine. If you could unmute Lorraine, and could you identify yourself for us, Lorraine?
Lorraine, please look for a button to confirm unmuting on your screen.
Oh, okay. There we go.
There you go. Thank you.
Lorraine,
just identify yourself.
Lorraine, yeah, for the record.
Yes, Lori Spencer. And regarding, I understand that they don't want their entrance blocked. None of us do. Even in front of my building, I'd love to have the entrance open to make easy access. We're blocked all the time. If a emergency vehicle were to come, they're still going to have to go over the parked cars that are there. So I don't think that issue's anything different than on any other street. And I've checked out some of the cul-de-sacs. In front of the Brearley School, it's a very temporary short period during school hours. The rest of the time, it's all no parking. There's no standing sign unless it's changed within the last 2 to 3 weeks. None of the streets have no standing. They're all no parking. But I understand your concern as well. But I think as a compromise, if there's a little shifting, currently the way it's set up, roughly, and I'll use car lanes because I don't know the measurements, you can put roughly about 3/4 of the street is the alternate side, and about the last quarter is the no parking zone. And you can fit roughly 3 cars on either side of the street, the north and the south side of the street. Perhaps if we maybe moved the no parking sign back 1 to gain 1 space there, keep 2 spots and eliminate 1 space at the very end of the cul-de-sac closest to the river so that there's an opening there. And then on the west side of this, on the north side of the street, perhaps if we put the no standing sign from facing their building from the left side of the canopy to the end of the cul-de-sac, that'll give you like 2 spots open. So that when a car goes down, they'll be able to U-turn in there, back up into the south side, make the U-turn correctly. It'll give you the freedom that you're looking for. And then there is still currently 1 no parking spot and 1 single alternate side. If we open that to no parking. So what that would do is the no parking would go from 6 spots, say to 5 spots, and you'll get 3 spots opening, 1 on the south side, 2 on the north side, which would allow for the turnaround. So I think that would be a good compromise and kind of solve both issues. I kind of thought about this and I'm like, let's try to work together on this and make a good resolution for everybody. The spots on 81st Street, I'm glad you brought those, not 81st, 80th Street. Those all used to be no parking. And from what I understand, and I don't know if this is true, someone moved into either 25 or 33 and had those changed, some kind of federal or government or somebody, and had them changed because he could park there without getting tickets and essentially turned them into private spaces. And there's no building entrances there. There might be a service entrance, but there's no usable entrances. And those 4 spots, people used, and now you get trucks. A lot of it's enforcement too, because all these spots, no matter what you do, no standing, as someone had said, if you have certain permits, you could park there. Even if you get a ticket, there's a way that they go away or whatever the situation is. So enforcement is also a big part. And then you have the trucks coming down, unloading, people moving in, people moving out, that'll sit there all day, loading and unloading. So I think enforcement is needed as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's my 2 cents.
Okay. Next is a member of the public, Boaz Galil. Unmute Boaz.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my concern is, like they said, it's they mentioned it's the public safety, the fire trucks cannot get there. So I think it's not a brainer And first thing first, I mean, the community need to look at it seriously and get it sorted, meaning that move it from no parking to no standing. So fire department, trucks can go there. You know, that's, I don't know. Let's make sure that there will not be problem over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Boaz. Okay, so there was discussion, I guess, about making some changes to that the neighbors seem to agree on, and maybe we could have someone put a resolution forth on that. I don't know, Craig, did you get all the ins and outs of that?
I don't necessarily have all of them. I was actually going to ask, because I'm a little confused about the inconsistencies that seem to exist, and I was wondering if DOT should be taking a look at all these cul-de-sacs to make sure that emergency access is able to be provided. I mean, at least to my eyes, the situation at 605 East 82nd Street is a little unique, given that they are so close to the end of the cul-de-sac that it would seem to be appropriate on those grounds to be able to provide that no standing. I also think we should be thinking more about, just in terms of general policies. We've talked about placards and potential placard abuse in the past, but we also need to have some sort of better answer in terms of having the ability for people with disabilities and permits to park in areas, to have dedicated spaces to allow buildings to maintain access as needed, but to allow for the spaces that are available to be prioritized. So I guess I'm a little unsure as to where we're landing with this, and whether the answer is to try to perhaps accommodate the immediate issue of 605 East 82nd, and then ask for a little further assessment of the other parking spaces along these cul-de-sacs, or the no parking versus no standing regulations versus where there's parking made available, and how to best deal with them. And then, especially given that we've only talked here about 82nd Street, so I don't know that we could go beyond that, since we haven't noticed it or anything.
Right. Okay, so Colleen, she's here.
You do have Colleen? One person who hasn't spoken who raised their hand, but I'll unmute Colleen.
I thought everyone had.
No, Carolyn Miglor?
Miglor. Miglori. So why don't we, all right, so why don't we have, why don't we have Carolyn speak first, and then I'd like to get Colleen into this for a minute.
Sure. Thank you. I'm actually at 55 East End, and my windows overlook the 82nd Street cul-de-sac. And one of the biggest issues are the garages on that block, and the garage is putting cars on the street supposed to be in the garage. So I think as you're working on this mess, and yes, it is a danger because, fire trucks, ambulances do have to come up the block. That's another issue. So the two garages that are there frequently have cars on the street that should be in their garages, but people are paying them off to keep their cars there.
In New York, paying off? Shock. There's gambling here?
I know.
There's gambling here.
Terrible. But that's another big issue, since parking is so limited.
Right.
And then they're taking up more spots.
Okay.
Hey, so it's Colleen from DOT. I just want to say that cul-de-sacs are, of course, they're like hidden areas, and they're not regularly enforced. That's why, folks are able to get away with parking there all day, and which is really bad, because if there is an emergency, you do need emergency vehicles to get through. I know that we have no standing, no parking regulations in the areas, and those are regulations that are supposed to be enforced. And I can tell you, and I will reiterate this, that what an individual mentioned before, it really is an enforcement issue. And this is something that should be taken up with the local precinct to let them know that there's a constant abuse of, vehicles that are parking in this area for long periods of time, or if there's double parking or trucks and so forth, to let the local precinct know.
They're here all day.
Mhm.
They're out there. So what they're doing, I can't answer you, but I've seen them on the streets, walking up and down, not ticketing. So that's something that needs to be looked into.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Valerie, let me take Valerie. We've had a lot of discussion among the public, but let's unmute Valerie. So you
Yeah,
can comment on this.
I just want to say that's a problem all over the Upper East Side with garages. There's another garage on East 77th Street where an actual private car company has run out of the garage, and all their cars are parked along the parking, and they take other cars and put them in the garage, and that's been reported repeatedly, and nothing's been done about it. I mean.
Yep. Okay. Well, Greg, I don't know. I think there's a couple of things we could do here. We're not going to have a meeting in August, so I don't want to, if we put it off, it'll be put off till September. But maybe we could pass a resolution and then go out and take a look at the situation in those cul-de-sacs before our full board meeting. I believe the full board meeting's on the 20th. Is that right, Will? Yes. So we have a meet, and we could maybe take a look at those and see how we might want to change things, at that point. But we might at least we'll have a resolution that we can deal with maybe, and maybe as you were talking about, we'll make a resolution just to affect the area right in front of the building. Rebecca Dangor wanted. Rebecca, do you want to unmute Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm proposing the resolution that Chuck just described, if there's a second.
Okay. Is there a second on that? Yeah, Valerie seconds.
Valerie.
Okay.
So wait, can you just clarify your resolution? So is it to provide in front of 605?
I'm gonna pass my clarification on to Chuck.
Yeah, yeah, in front of 605. Yeah, no standing. And we'll go and take a look at. We'll make Craig. You and I ought to figure out a time just to walk over there. It's not too far from either of us.
Works for me.
Okay. Yeah, and, I mean, you plan to do that before the full board meeting, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the stipulation is that we defer as a committee to you and to Chuck and Craig to follow up on that issue.
Okay. All right. So we will pass. So we have a resolution that says no standing anytime in front of 605 East 82nd Street. Okay. Is there anyone who wants to, Michelle, you want to talk?
Yeah, no, point of information. How many spots is that? When you say in front of, is that one spot, two spots?
Yeah.
What is it?
Two spots. They're saying spots? 2 spots.
Okay.
2 spots. 2 spots.
And then the rest of the block remains the way it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
2 spots being converted from no parking to no parking in front of 605
Correct.
82nd Street.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Okay, anyone, Rita, I don't know if Rita wanted to talk, but anyone who wants to, should we vote on this? Or Rita, you want to say something first? Oh, okay. We'll have the question called. Okay.
Rebecca seconds it.
Yeah.
All right. So
anyone who's opposed or wants to abstain or not voting for cause, raise their hand. Rita? I can't hear you.
Trying to lower my hand. No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. So we currently have here myself, Chuck, Michelle, Mrs. Brown, Rebecca Dangor, Rebecca Lamort, Rita, and Valerie.
Valerie. Okay. So I think I don't see anyone opposed or abstaining, et cetera. So I think that passes. So thanks, everyone. To be further continued, and I appreciate the confidence of the committee. Craig and I will take a look and see if we can make sense out of this. And we understand the situation Okay, Colleen, updates from the DOT.
Yeah.
You have any updates that you would like to talk to us about?
Yeah, you know what, Chuck, Craig, I'm so sorry. When you had asked about if we need a resolution for First Avenue bus lane enhancement, it's always good to have a resolution from the community board with the caveats that you listed. And I will take it back to Board Commissioner Pinkar about the presentation for Lexington Avenue and see if we can come in fall to give an update. I do remember when we presented it, we did say that we would come back and we would give an update to the community. So we would need a resolution on First Avenue, just so you know. Apologies on that. I tried to unmute, but my fingers were too short to like click it so fast. The other thing is that the update I have is that we are going to continue with our summer streets, which, as many of you know, is the first 3 Saturdays in August. So we are working on finalizing and looking at the routes carefully, and I'll keep Will informed of it, and we'll share a flyer of that. Valerie, I know you emailed me, this is for Valerie, you emailed me a paving request, so I will look into that and get back to you. Thank you for the segment, because the segment is very helpful, and I'll see if it's eligible, and we'll see what we can do to get that done, okay?
Valerie, go ahead.
I'm unmuted. Valerie's waving her hand frantically.
Yes, go ahead, Valerie. Yeah.
No, with the request is, and I'm sure this is on other blocks, all the blocks have been grouted for paving. And we just want to know when the next step is going to happen, because the crosswalks are extremely dangerous, especially for the elderly right now. And I don't know who did this job, but it's really horrible. And I mean, I just came home and like the cars are going all over the place. The people are falling.
Okay, so we milled the street. So you want to know when the paving is going to happen. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I will find out. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay,
I'll
thanks.
get that info for you in the morning.
Okay, great.
Rebecca Dangor, did you want to, yeah. Let's unmute Rebecca.
So this is mostly directed to Colleen. I apologize because I kind of noticed it a few weeks ago and then it seemed to be working. But the southwest stoplight on 72nd and Lexington seems to not really be, there seems to be some issues in terms of whether or not it'll actually say when you can walk across the street or when it stops for cars. It's a very important intersection. So I'll reach out to you offline based on walking home from work tomorrow, but consistently it's been half the time it's okay to walk lights have not gone up.
All right, and Rebecca, should that happen in the future, just please email Will and he can send that to me and I'll have our contractor go to the site immediately to take a look at it.
Yeah, no, that's my fault. I forgot the first time I saw it and then it was working, but I noticed today it was back to being irregular. And good. I'll also echo Valerie's concerns about the streets.
Okay.
I've seen it's very difficult, even on all the way through Park Avenue. For people on a wheelchair, it's impossible to deal with the how the streets are. Like even I had a little bit of a injury and I could barely get home. We need to fix this because it's not feasible, and we have the largest elderly population and therefore probably the one that has the most on wheelchairs, on walkers. You cannot get across the street safely in the current condition. So I'd like to get an update on when that's going to be resolved.
Sure. So just for clarification purposes, whenever we mill a street, we leave it open for 2 to 3 weeks so that utility companies can come in and do whatever the work that they have to do. But I will get back to you, Valerie, on when we will pave 72nd along that segment. And Rebecca, are you saying Park Avenue, we milled it and we have not paved it, or?
Yeah, it's so bumpy and impossible to get across. That also makes it more complicated when it comes to the light, like even on Lexington on the north south corner not working as well, it's like very, very difficult to man that area anyway, when you're walking across the street. And this is probably a stupid idea, but I would say maybe we need to extend the time for the walking signal on Park Avenue in that location until the streets are properly repaved, because it's if you're in a wheelchair or in a walker, you cannot get across that street in the normal amount of time. It's very difficult.
Okay, I'll find out when we're planning on milling it, paving it, and I'll get back to you.
You know, the whole Rebecca and Valerie, I think, have raised a valid point, and I've noticed this obviously for a long time. The whole delay between the milling and then the actual paving is really much too long, and it's not. And when they mill it, they don't necessarily smooth it down, even, you know, in ways that make it passable. And it's really, I mean, I don't, you know, I haven't had that much of a struggle, but I know that if you, at least if you have some disability or anything like that, I can't, you know, it could be a really tough situation. So I think we need to relook at that, and we may want to have you folks come in and discuss that whole issue if we can't, you know, and see if there can't be a better way to handle that.
I also wish, hope that we could be informed about that in the future, or the community could be, so we could alert people that maybe crossing the street would be that much more difficult. Like, as I said earlier, I have a little bit of an injury right now, so I can kind of do it. It's painful, but there's a lot of people who that really disrupts their way of life, and I wish there was a way to let them know when it was happening.
Right. So, Rebecca, we share our milling and paving schedule with the community board, and Will can touch a little bit on that.
Yeah, you also share with the elected officials as well, having sat in that other seat as well. You know, it is shared with the office. It is shared with all of our elected officials. How you guys want me to distribute that information is a conversation that we can have. I've just never had anyone approach to me with a request for me to put it anywhere in particular.
Well, maybe we ought to look at how we can make that more available to the public, right? Rebecca, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, luckily our community board is made up. I think now pretty much everyone lives on the Upper East Side. If it's not in that location, maybe we can ask certain members to distribute that to buildings or to post signage or something, just so people know.
So, Rebecca, when we mill and pave a street, we post signage a week ahead of time, just so you know. But I know sometimes the signs disappear. Maybe it's something.
Yeah, I don't think that's, you know, I think a lot of the time that's the case. So we should have a backup plan, because it's a quality of life type of issue.
I don't know if it's something that the community board can have on their website. Is that something, Will, that is possible, or a link?
I think it would have to be a really well coordinated effort between your office and my office, so that when things are delayed and things are, because often I know the DOT will say we're going to plan to do it on Tuesday unless it rains, and then we'll do it on Thursday. And that happens pretty frequently, because in summer it does rain a lot in New York City. So it would just, I've always been hesitant, number one, to direct people to the CB8 website for like major cutting edge, you know, news, because it does require a delicate effort between, you know, who's giving me the information and my office being able to update the information in a timely manner.
Yes.
And
then our schedules do change very frequently, as Bill mentioned, because of the weather. Yeah, absolutely.
So it would require extra coordination between DOT, and if DOT, I don't want to give Colleen a pass for this, but if Colleen has to do this for every community board in Manhattan, then it starts to become an unwieldy thing for her office. So, I mean, maybe perhaps it's something that we should be advocating for DOT to put up a live map that's on their website that is, you know, our upcoming milling and paving schedule that they update, you know, have one staff person who updates regularly.
So we do have
Yeah,
that. We do have a link on our website of our milling and paving schedule that, folks can be able to retrieve that information. We do have that.
Okay, well, we'll look and see if there's a way to deal with it so we get the word out a little bit. But I think the whole process, frankly, needs a little bit of study.
Can I make a suggestion? Maybe we can have a link somewhere posted to that, or if we put that in a weekly, and if we send out like this week at CB8 email and include in there any milling and paving that was on the DOT map.
Yeah, Colleen, what day do you usually send that to our office? Is that usually on Fridays or is that on Mondays?
It's usually in the middle of the week, maybe
Middle of the week, okay.
Yeah, Thursday, Friday, yeah.
Okay. So if it comes in at the end of the week, then it's probably something I can put into our e-blast.
Yeah.
But obviously then with like a big caveat in italics saying like subject to change, check DOT website.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't I know we have some other people who have things they probably want to talk to Colleen about too. So why don't we go through Lorraine, I think is there. And why don't we?
Yes, hi. I was trying to get back in before when we were talking about the East 82nd Street cul-de-sac.
Well,
pandemic, no, I'm just saying during the pandemic, everything got worse. With the car share standing there, it basically comes down to enforcement. I know people that park that have no special permit, nothing. And they say, you know what, if I get one ticket a month for $65, it's cheaper than a garage. So I've called the 19th precinct, nothing. And you see the patrol guys go by and they said, oh, he's got a cop sticker or he's got an MD plate. So a lot of it's going to come down to enforcement, even if, and I could cite, specific examples. But even with the no standing, I don't think it might help a little bit, but you got to get the enforcement. And I think if people keep getting hit with tickets, eventually they'll learn maybe not to park there if they're not supposed to. So enforcement is, as it is all over the city. I mean, you have cars parked in the turning lanes, all these new turning lanes that they put in, and you can't make the turn because you don't have the light to make the turn. So you're back in traffic. You can't get into the turning lane. So I just think throughout the city, it's a big enforcement issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Enforce.
Michelle, you have some comments?
Yeah, thanks, John. So Colleen, there are a couple of things that would come under old business, but you're the one I really need to address them to. So item number 1, I had raised with this committee last month, and I believe Chuck and Craig were going to look into it. I don't know if they had time, but it was about the street naming at Hunter. And my query was, it's not about who it was named after, why it was named or anything like that. My issue is that it never came to the community board. And traditionally over the years, street namings did come before us. Again, not discussing the merit or anything like that, but I'm wondering what happened to the process. Why didn't it come to us? Do you know? And then I have one other follow-up.
So Michelle, I'm not familiar with this, and I don't know why it didn't come to the community boards. I've worked with other community boards where the applicant who is requesting the street co-naming would have to reach out to the CB office to request that this be added to the agenda, the transportation agenda.
Yeah, so you remember it the way we remember it. And for some reason that was completely bypassed. But okay, you know nothing about it. So
I don't know anything about it, correct.
Okay, all right. So now item number 2, which I think you do know about, which has been very, very confusing. As you know, we're all talking about open restaurants and the new program and when the old one will become permanent and blah, blah, blah. We're all abreast of it. This committee passed a resolution that went to the full board, I think, and it got passed. However, in the interim, I went to an online, I'll call it a charrette, of 3 architects making a presentation of permanent street furniture and construction of paraphernalia that is to be used for open restaurants. And these presentations were very, very thorough by 3 major architectural firms and took into consideration, they spent a lot of time and a lot of money on this. And these presentations were like ready to be presented to the city. They were that detailed down to the materials and et cetera, et cetera. My question is, it directly was in conflict with what your website and I forget the lady's name, but you know, the lady at transportation who's in charge of all this, what her commentary was, in that the aim was supposed to be movable street furniture, maybe even seasonal. There had to be a 12-foot spread. You know, in other words, it was, I won't go into it, but there was a whole litany of requirements, and no time, and as a matter of fact, statements were made that in fact there would be no sheds, meaning structures that had roofs, you know, that maybe at most there would be 3-sided, 3-foot barriers to be protective in the street, et cetera, et cetera. This presentation by these 3 architectural firms, and I'm sure they're not whistling in the wind, was absolutely ready to go should it be decided upon by the city. So I'm sort of asking you, is this kind of thing under consideration by the DOT? And there's also some disagreement as to whether or not, I know DOT is in charge of the temporary restaurant. We need a little clarification if you're definitely going to be in charge of the permanent restaurant. That's a separate question. But whatever you know about these architectural presentations, if you can share with us how valid they were as a follow-up to our resolution, and do we need to do more?
So Michelle, before Colleen answers, Michelle, let me state, there is absolutely no doubt that DOT is in charge of the permanent restaurants.
Okay,
They'll
the prior question is much more important, so
Correct.
we'll let that go.
So, but I'd be very surprised, and maybe Colleen can answer that there's going to be any, we've been told, no permanent structures. But Colleen,
That's why I'm asking.
No, I understand.
That's correct. What I know is that the structures are not going to be permanent. They're going to be movable and they're going to be seasonal. So I don't know anything about these 3 architects and who they presented to and where they presented to. I mean, if you are able to give me the information, I can find out if this is a group that we are working with, or if the city is working with.
Well, it was the American Institute of Architects, and it was a presentation by 3 architectural firms, and I'm telling you, it was a ready to go thing. When you say permanent, these were foldable. The suggestion was that either side of them could even be rented out to the store next door for use other than restaurants, that they could be rented out for meeting spaces, for library. They could have shelves for books. They can have hooks and racks and whatever for clothing. Do you know anything about this?
Michelle, this is all new to me.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm going to get you the presentation. I'll work on it.
And I'll share it with Julie, with my colleague, and get her thoughts on it, because this is all new to me that I have.
Absolutely.
Do you know who the presentation was made to?
We were all, I'm trying to think how I got it, but various groups, including architects, sent out emails that if you wish to come to this presentation, you signed up for it at a certain day and a certain time, which I did. It was about 3 or 4 Fridays ago, and it was a few hours, and it was quite extensive. But I'm flabbergasted that the DOT doesn't know anything about it.
Was it specific to New York City, or was it just for?
No, New York. It was specific to New York City, and it was specific to design for the open restaurants program.
But
okay, Michelle,
permanent or
clarification? I'm saying that I don't know about it. I don't know if anyone in the higher ups know about it. So clarification, I'm not familiar with the presentation. Okay.
Can you check with Ed?
Can you send me the presentation, Michelle?
I will. I have to find. Yes, I can. I will. I'll search for it now. I'll send it to you. It must be online somewhere, or at least I can find a link. It's a few weeks, so I'm going to try to find a link and get it to you.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Colleen. And if you could just ask Ed, maybe he knows about it.
And you said, what's the name of the agency? American?
It was AIA.
American
Isn't
Institute of
that the
Architects.
American Institute of Architects?
Yes.
And it was, I can tell you the date, it was on a Friday, that it was zoomed out.
I just found the events calendar.
find
It seemed to have nothing to do with New York City DOT. It was it looks like it was an AIA sponsored sort of I don't know if it was a challenge, but basically it seems like it was more to highlight for academic purposes, perhaps, possible street furniture, but it was done in collaboration with a number of organizations and several New York City agencies. Well, but then it does say here, the initiative started as an open call for designers and restaurateurs with outdoor dining experience to share their work, highlighting innovative designs, materials, and methodologies to inform design policy for the city's open restaurants program. But this may very well have been designed long before the open restaurants program was.
Oh, I don't think so. By the dialogue and the rhetoric during the presentation, it was designed to be considered. And it was so thorough and so detailed down to material and measurements and
yes,
everything.
These look like they were studios essentially by the.
Well, they were 3 different architects. However, I sort of likened it to a charrette kind of thing, you know, presenting ideas. But it was definitely directed to be considered as part of the open restaurants
All
program.
right. Well, Colleen will look in. Colleen should look into it and see what's.
Yeah, I'll find out if we were part of that.
Please, thank you.
Or if you know anything about it.
When was the presentation, Craig?
It looks
It was
like
about a month
it was
ago.
May 20th. I just did a Google search for AIA open restaurants presentation and it came right up.
Okay, thanks, Craig.
May 20th then, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
And it may
all
have
right,
also
thanks.
been done in conjunction.
Yes, it
with
was on
regional
May
planning.
20th. It was May 20th at noon, and it was on Zoom. You had to, you know, sign up and get the
Okay.
Zoom
All
link.
right, thanks.
Okay.
I'll find out if we were part of that.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, Mrs. Brown is next, I believe. Can we unmute Mrs. Brown?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. These questions are directed to Colleen. I want to know what is the status of the speed bump study for 92nd Street? And Trader Joe's has a handicap lift and it's inoperable. It's been inoperable since they opened the store in December. And they had stated that the Department of Transportation was responsible for repairing it and or replacing it. So I don't know if you're the correct person, or perhaps you can direct us to the correct agency. And my other concern is the corridor at 86th and 3rd Avenue and 72nd and 3rd Avenue. Is it possible to extend the walk time signals? Because I have difficulty in my walker trying to complete crossing the street. Most of the drivers are impatient, and you have a few that are respectful and allow me to complete the crossing. It's become a real concern, a real safety issue. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Brown, the 90-second speed hump study is still pending. That usually takes about 6 months for us to do our data collection.
It's almost 7 months now.
Yeah, well, we have other locations that we're working on, but I'll follow up with you. I'll find out what the status is.
Thank you.
It's usually 6 months to a year, just so you know. I will check and I will get back to you. Let's see, the the Whole Foods lift, I'm not.
Trader
familiar-
Joe's.
Trader Joe's. Where is that, Mrs. Brown? Is that 90?
It's the Bridgeway at 59th Street, 60th Street.
Okay.
And First Avenue.
Is it attached to a bridge structure or?
Oh, no, it's inside the store.
We don't fix that, Mrs. Brown. That's not, DOT does not fix lifts inside of a store.
Colleen, it's underneath the Queensboro Bridge. It's in the bridge market space.
It's in the bridge market space?
Yeah. Underneath the Queensboro Bridge.
I was told by the manager it was the responsibility of the state.
Okay.
That doesn't sound right, but to me, but why, Colleen, maybe you can look into that.
So that you can direct me or us to the correct agency.
Shouldn't that be the building department? They're the ones that
Yeah.
they're the ones that had, who would enforce something like that, it seems to me.
I mean, if the elevator has to go through part of the bridge, they may need DOT approval.
Right, that may
to
be.
touch the bridge, which also may need
Oh,
LPC
no.
approval to change the bridge because it is also a landmark.
This is
It is also run by EDC. Hold on one second. It is also an administered space by EDC, so EDC may also be involved in deciding whatever happens in that space. But we also, did get a presentation by Trader Joe's, so we also can reach out to their lobbyists and see if they can give us information. So if you don't mind, just shoot me an email and I'll shoot it over to Trader Joe's to see if I can get any updates on their elevator, and if without going to the 3 different agencies I just listed that may or may not be involved in holding it up.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Will, because we can see what agencies involved in doing what they need to do.
This is a one-person elevator. It's a lift. One of those handicap lifts that usually goes up.
Yeah.
No more than maybe, oh my goodness. Maybe just maybe 6 or 7 flights of stairs. They have them in the library.
Mm-hmm.
We'll look into that if you will.
Yeah, it's a portable lift.
Yeah, Mrs. Brown, if you could just shoot me an email, tell me which side of the store it's on and like where it is in relation to the store, and I can just send it over to Trader Joe's and see if they can give us an answer what not their manager is telling us, but what is actually going on. Because often, we all know this, the managers of the stores don't actually know what's going on with the architects who are, in charge of like getting these stores up and running.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Mrs. Brown.
And Mrs. Brown, regarding the signal timing changes, you don't have to wait to, present this request to me at the Transportation Committee meeting. You can always let Will know, and Will can email me so I can, look at this as soon as possible. So in the future, just let Will know and Will reach out to me, okay?
Thank you.
So it's signal timing changes for which location? Tell me again.
86 and 3rd.
Okay.
72nd and 3rd.
And 87th and 3rd?
No, 72nd, 86th and 72nd.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll find out to see what we can do and what we have there right currently.
Thank you.
Good, thanks. Okay, let's go to Andrew Fine. Andrew?
Hi, Chuck. Thank you. Real quick question and a follow-up on location 211 East 83rd Street, which is the St. Elizabeth Church, which went out of business in 2014. I brought it up to the community board 2 years ago regarding 5 parking spots that are marked no parking anytime in deference to the church space, which is no longer utilized. And the board said that they would recommend changing that to alternate side, just like the rest of the block. So it's 211 East 83rd. It's St. Elizabeth Church and also the rectory, but they closed in 2014. So the no parking anytime is no longer needed or wanted.
Yeah.
That's all I've got.
Okay, thanks.
Do you think you can
we
get Colleen on that, or somebody
Yeah.
to?
I thought we already said that we didn't need to go through a formal process. We just need to ask DOT to make the change.
That was my impression a couple of years ago.
So Andrew, whatever the current regulation is on that block, that's what we would restore and install. So if the church is closed, yes, we'll remove the no parking regulation, but whatever parking is on that side of the street, we would install that regulation.
Right, and that's alternate side of the street, just like the rest of the block. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I will make a notation of this and send it to my borough engineer so we can confirm that, and we'll get the sign changed. Okay.
Fantastic. Much appreciated.
That'd be good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Andrew. Elizabeth Fine is next, I believe. Can we unmute Elizabeth?
Hi, guys. That's my brother, Andrew, by the way.
Okay. we won't hold that against you or him.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. And I'm exhausted, so it tells you I've waited this long to speak, that it's an important matter to me. And I apologize if I haven't been on these before to know if it's been discussed or where it may have landed.
Please.
But it's something I've been wanting to bring up, and hopefully Colleen can help with it. The on 94th between 3rd and Lexington, on the corner, there is a Barking Dog restaurant that many may be familiar with.
Yes.
Multiple sheds. They basically permitted for extra outdoor seating and got it and built it during the pandemic. You can see the glassed in structure where they've already added outdoor seating. And then they also have like the equivalent of like 5-6 parking spots worth of sheds, 1 or 2 of them being used to store furniture, to not actually have diners in it. I've seen furniture in it for the entire year. And so I'm just wondering, the process for deciding how many sheds one particular restaurant gets, and then how it's part of an open restaurant plan if it's storing furniture. And so it's frustrating as a driver trying to find a parking spot between that and the district, which also is on the other corner, and then the 92nd Street bar, like the rotation that you would do to park. There's just so many spots with the sheds, but particularly just irritating is a shed filled with furniture, or 2 sheds or 2 parking spots that's just being used as storage, which just feels like an abuse.
It is an abuse.
It is an abuse, Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, under the OR program, restaurants, they apply and they're permitted to have a structure in front of their establishment. There should not be another structure to store furniture.
Yeah.
I will have an inspector inspect the location. What's the name of the restaurant?
Barking Dog.
The Barking Dog on 94th and 3rd. They have tripled their seating as a result of this outdoor plan. And again, they're not even using some of it. And I do believe that the structure that they built for the furnishings is beyond their storefront. But I can't be, I can't be sure of it. But if it's for diners, I don't understand why there's furniture.
Yeah, they can't use it for storing furniture. That's
they can't do that. 94th and 3rd, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Barking Dog 94th, right at 3rd. They go around.
And I think, I think you'll see that also, like if you have your inspector out, like you'll see that at the district also at times. The district is across the street on 94th and 3rd. They also have front sheds, and they also have side sheds. And frankly, they just don't have enough customers to fill those sheds. So they often just store chairs and tables instead of having, customers in there. So overnight or whatnot.
Well, can I actually just ask Colleen what the policy is in terms of storage? Because I just actually played outdoors at Barking Dog a couple of weeks ago. I don't recall seeing it. It was a Sunday brunch time, I don't recall seeing any seats or storage outside. I think all the outdoor seating space was being used for outdoor seating at that time. And if I just took a look at Google Street View from September 21, and same thing, everything was set up for dining. I don't dispute that there are.
I have photos of it.
I don't dispute that there are times that it happens. That's why I'm asking what the policy is for temporary storage or whatever it may be. I just want to make sure that we're dealing with the issue and understanding the distinction there.
Yeah, some OR structures or owners, they would have their furniture bolted or locked in their structure, or they would have space where they would remove it and put it inside. It depends. I have not seen, any structure from, going, around the city where there's an additional structure that houses or stores furniture. I usually see them.
It's an extension of the space. I mean, they've just extended and the last, and you may have not seen it,
right,
Craig, because it's the very end, and it almost feels like, I don't know where you're seated, but it's that very end between Lex and Third, so you almost don't notice it. You might think there's tables that are empty, but when you really peer in, like you can't even get into it. Like you have to peer in through the glass in that little end pod, and that's with furniture in it and not customers.
It's probably like what you said, Elizabeth, that it's an extension to currently what they have, which they really shouldn't do.
It just feels like an overreach, you know, and I feel like we have to figure out, I know that there's the open plan and the frontage in this, but there definitely are some overreaches, and I would love to, whether it's, sorry, my TV is going off because I had to pause it like 2 hours ago. Hold on. But basically it's like, I would love to give you a tour, walk around. I mean, there's definitely violations, there's overreaches, there's unsafe structures, there's dead sheds that aren't in use, there's shed fires that have happened. There's just so many either overreaches, violations. And I just think, while it's a lovely program and a lot of it is really nice for all of us and we all want to be safe with the variant, I also think there's overreach and abuse, and it needs to be policed. People are taking advantage, whether it's getting extra square footage and not paying for it, or renting square footage, or whatever it is. I really feel strongly, I don't know how we could take steps to do a little tour. I think we need to really look at this.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I've mentioned to other community members as well, that locations that are not in compliance, please email Will, let him know. I'll have inspectors go out there and provide updates to him that he can share with you. Yeah,
and I guess I would just want to know what the compliance is if you send it to me,
Sure.
and what is the plan going forward as far as health and safety of sheds when there's no, I hear Michelle, so eloquently, quizzing people on their front stoops and whether they're going to have a step up or a step down. And we just have these nailed together whatevers with no standards floating all over the place. And I just feel like, we have to figure out how are these going to be, regulated and safe and all of that. Now I know for Colleen, it's about the parking and the enforcement of that. Maybe it's getting our community, council people involved, but it's we need to figure out how to not upset small business, because we understand that's important, but also keep things regulated, safe and healthy.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Look, we've been going at this a long time, and
I'm sure you have.
and we're getting paid too much to spend all this time like nothing. And
yeah. Well, listen, I've been listening for 3 hours, so
we appreciate
to everybody. So I need to be at the end of the meeting. Maybe a suggestion new business could be at the beginning meeting for people.
No.
Okay.
Listen, here's the situation. I'll just sum it up. There has been a lot of abuse. We wanted to help the restaurants. They deserve to be helped. There has been a lot of abuse. DOT has not enforced the way they ought to enforce. But the permanent program is going to eliminate all these permanent sheds. It's going to be a different program whenever that comes into effect. But that's going to be a while. So we're going to be stuck with the temporary program. So I think people need to, like you have, need to come in and tell about situations that you think are abuses, and Colleen will make sure they're examined. Okay, let's.
Or just let we'll know ahead
Michelle?
of time.
Right. Michelle, you want to say something again? Okay, let's send you Michelle.
Thank you. Just as an addition to what Chuck just said, I may be wrong. Colleen can verify this. I think the temporary program was just extended for 3 years. I don't know if that's right or wrong. That's what I heard at another meeting. So maybe you can verify that. However, I wanted to pick up on the named streets, Chuck, because we didn't have a solution as to what we're going to be doing. I think Colleen doesn't know about it. My understanding really is that it came from Keith Powers.
Yeah,
And
we'll talk to his office. Well,
can you send him a letter, because both our council members should know that anything like that comes up, it should come to the board as a matter of protocol. That's how it's always been, and precedent. And I don't like to single Keith out. We love Keith. We hope he represents us well. We want to reach out to him and have him available to us. But there have been a few things that Keith has presented to the council, wrote, intros to, that he never came to the board with. One was having music, extending the music rules inside restaurants, his advocacy for open restaurants. That's all fine, but we're his board. He should come to us and present to us first before he actually proposes legislation, or at least at the time he proposes legislation. But this thing with the street naming was his particular pet peeve, not pet peeve, but he rallied around this. And I say it has nothing to do with who who it was named after. It's a matter of process, and he should be called out on the fact that should come to us. So I hope if you could write a letter, I think Russell probably wouldn't object to that with his approval. I would appreciate it. And if you could report back to us at our next meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Rebecca, Dangor? Yeah.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second to that? I believe there is. Yes, Michelle seconds. Okay. We are adjourned. I thank everyone we've been at it for over 3.5 hours, and I appreciate everyone's participation, and see people at the full board on the 20th. Take care.
And land use tomorrow for board members.
Oh, land, that's right. Land use tomorrow. Okay, thanks everybody.